I was standing outside the state-run restaurant, listening to Annie Wu go on and on about how great this blind date was supposed to be. "This man has excellent conditions," she kept saying. "If your mother and I weren't old friends, I'd never share such a good opportunity with outsiders." I kept my head down, barely responding. Auntie Wu softened her tone when she noticed. "I know you're suffering, dear girl. But think about your family situation right now. Marrying a soldier means security. When you go in there, be smart, make a good impression, and lock this down quickly so your parents can stop worrying." I finally looked up and quietly agreed. Auntie Wu seemed startled by my face for a moment. I could tell she was thinking about how pretty I was and how dangerous that beauty could become given my family's status. Here's the thing nobody in this world knows. I'm not really the original Shen Qingrao. I was a surgeon in the 21st century. I'd just finished several major operations back-to-back, collapsed for a nap in the on-call room, and woke up here, in 1967, the worst possible year to land in. And it got worse. I'd transmigrated into the body of a capitalist's daughter, basically walking around with a giant target on my forehead. The Shen family used to be well-known medicine merchants who owned several pharmacies. A few days ago, someone reported our family background. In this era, once you get reported, nothing good follows. I figured the paperwork for our family's exile to the countryside would arrive any day now. The original Shen Qingrao was a sheltered girl who'd never faced hardship in her life. When she heard the whole family might be sent down to the rural areas, she got so scared she fell seriously ill with a fever that wouldn't break. She died from it, and that's when I took over this body. The moment I recovered even slightly, my new parents, father and mother Shen, started frantically looking for a husband for me. Through Auntie Wu's connections, they found this match, a military man. They were desperate to marry me off before the exile order came, hoping a soldier husband could protect me from suffering in the countryside. Honestly, as a modern woman with a medical degree, the idea of rushing into marriage just to survive disgusted me. But then I thought about those two elderly people with their graying hair and red-rimmed eyes from crying, and I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I was already here. The least I could do was give their hearts some peace. Auntie Wu pointed at the restaurant and told me the man was inside, tall, well-built, good-looking, wearing a military uniform. She said she wouldn't come in with me so we could talk privately, though I knew the real reason. If the man took one look at my family background and refused, it would be less awkward without her there. I watched her walk away, then stood at the entrance staring up at the state-run restaurant sign and let out a long sigh. After collecting myself, I walked inside. The whole place went quiet the moment I stepped through the door. Every pair of eyes landed on me. People started whispering about how beautiful I was, saying they'd never seen a girl this pretty in their lives. I was used to this kind of attention. Back in my previous life, I was known as the hospital beauty, with suitors lining up from the outpatient clinic all the way to the inpatient ward. I scanned the restaurant calmly. It was busy, with groups of people eating and chatting together. Only one person sat alone, in the far corner, a man with his back to the door, sitting ramrod straight in a faded old military uniform. That had to be him. I walked over and started to introduce myself, but then figured there was no point in asking. He was the only one sitting alone, so I just sat down across from him. He looked up, clearly surprised that someone had walked over and sat down without hesitation. For just a split second, I caught a flash of amazement in his eyes when he saw my face. At the same time, I got my first clear look at him, and my heart jolted. There was a long scar running from his brow bone, all the way down to his chin. The scar on his face looked like an ugly centipede crawling from above his eyebrow, all the way down to the edge of his chin. It was deep. The healed tissue was raised and darker than the skin around it, making his otherwise handsome face look fierce and intimidating. Combined with his cold expression and slightly furrowed brows, he looked like someone you wouldn't want to mess with. I won't lie, seeing that scar did startle me for a second, but only for a second. I'm a surgeon. In my past life, I'd seen things on the operating table far worse than this. Patients whose entire cheeks had rotted through from oral cancer, factory workers with half their faces torn off by machinery. I'd stitched them all back together with my own hands. Compared to those bloody, mangled scenes, This man's scar was honestly not that bad. From a medical standpoint, the wound had been treated reasonably well and healed cleanly. I calmed down quickly and looked at him with steady eyes. He was studying me too. Beyond that initial flash of amazement, there was something curious in his gaze. He didn't say a word, just sat there watching me in silence. I figured he was probably the quiet type. Good. That saved me from wasting time on small talk. The truth was, I'd come here today have to satisfy my parents and have to deliberately ruin this match. I didn't want to get married. I especially didn't want to follow some soldier to a military base and leave my aging parents behind. I wasn't the original Shen Qingrao, but I was living in her body, and her parents had been nothing but kind to me. I owed them. I knew exactly what kind of life awaited people who got sent to the countryside in this era, and I couldn't just stand by and watch them suffer through it alone. So I decided to be blunt and lay everything out. "Hello, my name is Shen Qingrao," I said. The Qing from clear, the Rao from charming. Without waiting for him to respond, I continued. "The matchmaker probably told you some things about my situation, but I think it's better to be honest face to face." I paused briefly, then went on. "My family are capitalists. You know what that label means right now. We were reported a few days ago, and the documents for our exile to the countryside will probably arrive any day. If you marry me, I won't bring you any benefits. I'll only be a stain on your record." I looked him straight in the eyes. "You're a soldier with a bright future. But if you take a capitalist's daughter as your wife, you'll never pass the background check. Your promotions in the military will definitely suffer. You might even get disciplined or forced to leave the army because of me." I was being as direct and harsh as possible on purpose. I wanted him to hear the worst-case scenarios and back out on his own. That way I could go home and tell my parents it wasn't that I refused. The man rejected me because of our family status. Then I could suggest going to the countryside together as a family so we could at least look after each other. He listened to everything I said. Then the server called out his order number: braised pork and white rice. He got up to fetch the food without a word. When he came back carrying a plate of glossy, fragrant braised pork and 2 bowls of rice, he set the dishes down and quietly placed a clean bowl and chopsticks in front of me. "Eat first," he said in a low voice. "We'll talk more after." I was actually starving. The original body had just recovered from a serious illness, and all I'd had for days was watery porridge. Now, looking at that glistening braised pork with its rich red-brown color and the perfectly steamed rice, my stomach growled before I could stop it. I thanked him and picked up the chopsticks. The pork was tender, practically melting in my mouth, rich but not greasy, with a hint of sweetness. I ate slowly, taking small bites out of habit. He ate fast, the way soldiers do, efficient and clean. He finished his bowl in no time and put down his chopsticks. The moment he did, I quickly finished my rice and set mine down too. "Full already?" He frowned slightly. "Have some more, there's no rush." I smiled and picked at my water. "I'm full, thank you." Eating until I was only 80% full was a habit I'd kept for years. Overeating made my stomach uncomfortable. Besides, stuffing myself in front of a blind date wasn't exactly a good look. While I sipped my water, I overheard 2 women at the next table whispering about us. "Those 2 must be on a blind date, right?" The girl said so herself. "He's her date, but she looks like a goddess, and that man." I caught a glimpse when he turned around. That scar on his face is terrifying. They're so mismatched. What a waste for such a pretty girl. I glanced up at him. His brows were drawn tight, and his expression had darkened. He'd definitely heard them too. I set down my water and spoke up, not loudly, but enough for the people around us to hear. "When I look for a partner, I only care about character, not looks." Then I gave him a playful little wink. "After all, I've got enough looks for both of us." A man with good character is way harder to find than a pretty face. His tense expression eased. The furrow between his brows smoothed out, and the corner of his mouth even twitched upward slightly. He looked at me and asked in his deep voice, "You really aren't afraid of me?" Most people see this scar and can't even bring themselves to talk to me. "Afraid of what?" I said. "An ugly face is still better than an ugly heart." Besides, I looked at the scar. then let my eyes move to the unblemished right side of his face. My tone was completely sincere. I don't think you're ugly. Take away that scar and you're actually very handsome. I meant it. His bone structure was genuinely excellent. High brow ridge, straight nose, sharp jawline. The kind of face that would be strikingly good-looking if not for the scar. He studied my eyes. Whatever he saw there, no disgust, no pity, just calm appreciation, seemed to settle something inside him. Then suddenly he smiled. That smile softened all the coldness and ferocity in his face, making him look like a completely different person. "You don't mind my appearance," he said, each word clear and deliberate. "I don't mind your family status." He looked straight at me. "We're a pretty good match." I froze. Wait, what? Did this blind date just succeed? I was completely stunned. How was this not going according to plan? I just laid out all the worst things about my situation. Capitalist family, about to be exiled, a guaranteed stain on his career, and any normal person should have immediately drawn a line and walked away. But instead, he said we were a pretty good match? Was something wrong with his brain or his ears? Before I could even recover from the shock, he started introducing himself. "My name is Fu Yanjin. I'm 26 years old." His expression was completely serious, no trace of joking. "I'm from a rural village in Heilongjiang province. Both my parents are alive. I have 2 older sisters who are already married and a younger brother who farms back home. Our family status is pure poor peasant, the cleanest background you can get. I'm currently serving at a military base on an island in the south. I'm a regiment commander. The assignments are heavy and the base is far from home, so I rarely get to go back." He paused and looked straight at me. "So, if we get married, you'd need to come with me to the island. The living conditions there aren't as good as here in Yen City. It would be tough, but the military pay is decent, over 100 yuan a month plus ration tickets. Supporting you wouldn't be a problem at all. Even if you didn't work, we'd live comfortably." I sat there blinking, my brain struggling to keep up. Regiment commander? At 26? That was seriously impressive for someone his age. And his family background, parents alive, sisters married off, brother farming, a textbook peasant household with the most spotless political status possible. A man like this, in this era, should have women lining up around the block to marry him. So why on earth would he want me? A capitalist's daughter whose family was about to be raided? What was in it for him? My family being destroyed? Me dragging him down? Nothing about this made sense. And that name, Fu Yanjin, it sounded so familiar, like I'd heard it somewhere before. While I was lost in thought, he spoke again, his tone heavier this time. "But there's something unusual about my situation that I need to tell you up front." There was a flicker of tension in his eyes that he almost managed to hide. "I have 2 sons." My brain exploded. 2 sons? I stared at him with wide eyes. Auntie Wu had absolutely not mentioned this. She'd said he was a soldier with good conditions, not a word about him being divorced with 2 kids. You've been married before?" I blurted out, then immediately felt rude for asking. He shook his head. "No. I've never been married, but has 2 sons?" My mind instantly raced through a dozen dramatic scenarios. He must have seen my confusion because he explained on his own. "They're not my biological children. They're the orphans of a comrade who died in battle. That comrade sacrificed himself to save my life. After he was gone, his wife couldn't handle being a widow. She decided the 2 children were burdens holding her back from remarrying, so she abandoned them and disappeared. No one's heard from her since." My heart clenched. "What about their grandparents? Other relatives?" He shook his head, his eyes dimming. "My comrade grew up without a father. His mother raised him alone. When she got the news of his death, she just collapsed. She passed away not long after. The children's maternal grandparents cut off contact ages ago. So these 2 boys have no one except me." He added quietly, "The older one is 6 this year, the younger one is 3. They're both very well behaved. They can feed and dress themselves, and they even help with simple chores." I went silent. In my previous life, I'd seen plenty of heartbreaking situations at the hospital, but hearing this story still made my chest ache. Now I finally understood why a man with his qualifications had ended up resorting to blind dates. An unmarried man raising two children that aren't his own. That's incredibly difficult in any era. And as a soldier who's rarely home, how could he possibly take care of them properly? My initial curiosity about him transformed into genuine respect. People in this era were mostly simple and loyal, but a man willing to shoulder this kind of burden for a promise to a fallen comrade? That was extraordinarily rare. I wasn't even sure I could do the same if I were in his position. He must have taken my silence the wrong way, because a bitter smile appeared on his face. I've been on a few blind dates before. Every girl heard about this situation and left immediately. It's completely understandable if you feel the same. My face is already scary enough, and asking you to accept two children on top of that, it really is too much. No, that's not it at all, I said quickly, shaking my head. I actually admire you. You're a man of loyalty and responsibility. Raising two of your comrades orphans while unmarried, not just any man could do that. I paused, then continued. And I actually like children. I wouldn't mind raising them. It's just... I hesitated, but decided to be honest. The truth is, I came to this blind date today planning to sabotage it. I want to go to the countryside with my parents. He looked surprised. The countryside? Do you know what it's like there? You're not afraid. I know exactly what it's like. That's precisely why I have to go with them. I sighed. People who get sent down do the hardest, most exhausting labor. They can't eat enough, can't dress warmly, and the local villagers treat them like outcasts. My parents are old, and their health isn't great. How could I just let them go through that alone? If I go with them, at least I can share some of the burden. A family staying together is always better than being separated. Something shifted in his expression, a deep emotion I couldn't quite read. Have you told your parents about this plan? He asked. I shook my head. I haven't had the chance yet. If they knew what you were thinking and were willing to let you come along, they wouldn't have sent you out. On a blind date today, he hit the nail right on the head with that one. My shoulders slumped. He thought for a moment, then said, Here's what you should do. Go home and talk to your parents properly. Tell them exactly what you're thinking. If they agree to let you go to the countryside with them, then we'll pretend today's meeting never happened. But if... He looked at me, something unreadable swirling in his eyes. If they don't agree, if you still need someone to take you away from here, I'm willing to marry you. His voice wasn't loud, but every word landed like a stone dropped into the still water of my heart, sending ripples spreading outward in every direction. Tomorrow morning, same time, same place. If you come, I'll take you with me. If you don't come, I'll accept that we weren't meant to be. Then he looked at me one last time, picked up his water cup, and said nothing more. I sat there, my heart a tangled mess of emotions. He said he was willing to marry me. He said he'd wait for me right here. This man, his character, his integrity, his sense of duty, he was almost exactly what I'd imagined an ideal partner would be. But my family. I couldn't abandon my parents just for my own happiness. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, my mind was clear. Comrade Fu, thank you for today. As for what you just said, I paused. I couldn't bring myself to refuse him outright, so I kept it vague. I'll think about it. If there's nothing else, I should head home. I stood up, gave him a small smile, and walked away. I appreciated his kindness, I really did. But right now, I had something more important to do. I needed to go home and convince my parents to let me go to the countryside with them. The moment I stepped out of the restaurant, I spotted Auntie Wu waiting anxiously under a nearby awning, craning her neck to look my way. The second she saw me, her eyes lit up and she jogged over. My dear girl, you're finally out. She grabbed my hands and looked me up and down, beaming. So? How did it go? Is the man decent? My head was still spinning from everything Fu Yanjin had said, so I just mumbled. It went well. He's pretty good. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Auntie Wu was thrilled, clearly convinced the match was as good as settled. She couldn't help peeking back toward the restaurant, then leaned in close to whisper, I snuck a look earlier. That young man is really handsome, tall and well-built. You two together would be the perfect couple. I turned and glanced back through the door. From this angle, I could see Fu Yanjin's right side, the unscarred half of his face. That sharp jawline, the straight nose, the thin pressed lips. Every feature looked like it had been carefully sculpted. There was something wild and striking about him. His brow ridge cast a slight shadow over his eyes, hiding whatever emotions were churning beneath, only showing those long dark lashes. I thought of the way he'd smiled earlier, and I couldn't help smiling too.
Yeah.
He really is good-looking. Annie Wu caught my shy expression and practically melted with relief. She patted my hand eagerly. Great, great. Since you're both happy, let's hurry home and tell your parents. I'll go talk to the man's family too and get them to come propose as soon as possible. We should set a date for the marriage certificate right away. My smile faded a little. Marriage was far from certain. If I could convince my parents to let me go to the countryside with them, I wouldn't be getting married at all. But I couldn't say that to Annie Wu right now, so I just nodded and walked home with her. What I didn't know was that right after I left, a much younger soldier came bursting into the restaurant like a gust of wind. He was Fu Yanjin's friend in Yen City, a guy named Meng Xiaotian. He spotted Fu Yanjin in the corner and rushed over, only to find the braised pork nearly gone and 2 empty rice bowls on the table. Bro, you said you were treating me to lunch.
How could you eat without me?
I'm starving, he wailed. He plopped down in the seat I'd just been sitting in, ready to devour whatever was left. But then he noticed the second set of used chopsticks and a half-empty water glass. Huh? Bro, who were you eating with? A friend, Fu Yanjin said flatly. A friend? You know someone else in the city besides me? Man or woman? Fu Yanjin ignored the question and told him to go to the train station and change his ticket to tomorrow afternoon.
What?
We were supposed to leave today. The tickets are already bought, Meng Xiaotian protested. Something came up tomorrow morning, was all Fu Yanjin said. He knew his superiors were pressuring him to return quickly. This had been a secret mission, and delaying an extra day would probably earn him a lecture and maybe even a written self-criticism. But he kept thinking about my face, my clear eyes, the way I hadn't flinched at a scar. He'd finally met a girl who made his heart skip, and she hadn't been disgusted by him. He wasn't going to let that slip away. A scolding? Fine. A written apology?
Fine.
Worth it. Meanwhile, back at my house, Auntie Wu was excitedly telling my parents every detail. You should have seen it. Qingrao and that CF family boy hit it off beautifully. I could tell they were both interested. This is practically a done deal. I'll have the CF family come propose right away. The day after tomorrow looks like an auspicious date. Let's get them to the marriage office as soon as possible. I'd been sitting quietly with my eyes down, but the moment I heard that, my whole body froze. CF family? I looked up at Auntie Wu, confused. Auntie Wu, what did you say? The CF family? She blinked at me. Yes, the CF family. The young man's name is Xie Qinan. I heard he was actually your high school classmate, same class, and everything. The moment he heard his blind date was you, he immediately requested leave from the army and rushed back. Wait, no. I cut her off, my face caught somewhere between embarrassment and disbelief. Annie Wu, the man I met today. His surname isn't Xie, his name is Fu Yanjin. The room went dead silent. Auntie Wu's smile froze on her face. My parents stared at each other, completely lost. Fu Yanjin? Auntie Wu frowned, thinking hard.
Who?
I don't know anyone by that name. Then it hit her. She slapped her thigh and nearly jumped out of her seat. Oh my goodness, girl. Did you go to the wrong person? I told you clearly his name is Xie Qinan. I said to look for the tallest, most built man in a military uniform. How did you end up with the wrong one? My cheeks burned.
I'm sorry, Auntie Wu.
I was a little distracted outside and didn't catch the name clearly, but I added, when I went in, there was only one person wearing a military uniform in the whole restaurant, and that was Fu Yanjin. I didn't see any Xie Qinan. I vaguely recognized the name Xie Qinan from the original Shen Qingrao's memories. He was a high school classmate, tall, handsome, gentle-looking. But they'd barely ever spoken to each other. If I'd known it was him, I definitely wouldn't have gotten the wrong person. My parents sensed something was off too. My mother grabbed Auntie Wu's hand anxiously. Lin Feng, wasn't the meeting set for noon at the state-run restaurant? Why wasn't Qingrao there? Where did that boy go? While all of this was happening, on the other side of the city, the real blind date, Qingrao, was at home packing his bags. His mother was helping him stuff clothes into a green canvas bag, confused and rambling. Didn't you agree to meet the Shen family's girl today? If things went well, you'd get your marriage certificate and take her to the island with you. So why are you suddenly packing to go back to base? Qingrao forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mom, an urgent assignment came up. I have to return to base immediately. The blind date will have to wait. He told her to go stay at her mother's house in the countryside for a while. He'd send for her later once things settled down. His mother worried about being rude to the Shen family since I was surely waiting at the restaurant, but Qingrao brushed it off, saying he'd explain to them when he got the chance. By the time Auntie Wu rushed over to the Xia house, the door was locked tight. A neighbor told her the mother and son had left with bags of luggage and weren't coming back anytime soon. Auntie Wu came back to our house fuming and flustered to deliver the news. My parents were completely bewildered. What happened? Everything was agreed upon. Why would he run off to the countryside instead of showing up? I had a pretty good guess. Could it be because of our family situation? Did they change their minds? It made perfect sense. At a time like this, everyone was desperate to distance themselves from the Shen family. Nobody wanted to get dragged down with us. The Xia family backing out at the last minute was entirely logical. Impossible. Auntie Wu shook her head firmly. I told Qingrao's mother everything about your family's status up front. That boy personally called back and said he didn't mind. That's the only reason I arranged this meeting. He's been a good kid since he was little. He wouldn't do something this unreliable. Then why didn't he show up? I asked. Auntie Wu had no answer. My father cut the conversation short. He pulled out a red envelope he'd prepared in advance, the matchmaker's fee, and handed it to Auntie Wu. She tried to refuse since the match hadn't worked out, but my mother pushed it into her hands, thanking her for all her effort and asking her to keep looking for suitable matches for me. After Auntie Wu left, it was just the three of us. My mother's composure crumbled instantly. She looked at me with anguished eyes and said, "We didn't want you or your brother suffering with us in the countryside. That's why we published the newspaper notice cutting ties with you both. Your brother Shaoan has already been sent to the far northwest to join the army. The conditions there are harsh, but at least he's safe. We can half rest easy about him. But you," her eyes reddened. "You're a girl, and you've always been eye-catching. The way you look now. In times like these, having a face like yours is dangerous. It's too easy to become a target." She and my father had been worried sick over my marriage, their hair going white from the stress. They'd pinned everything on today's blind date. Meet the soldier, get the certificate in a couple days, and I'd be off to follow the army as a military wife. That status would protect me, and they could finally stop worrying. Sending me to the countryside with them would be throwing me into a fire pit. If they couldn't protect me there, it would ruin my entire life. But now the man hadn't even shown up, and the exile paperwork could arrive any day. My mother broke down completely, pulling me into her arms and sobbing. In my previous life, I was an orphan. I'd never felt this kind of heavy, desperate parental love before. Being held like this, hearing her choked crying, my heart softened and my own eyes stung with tears. It made me even more determined not to leave these parents who truly loved me. "Mom, don't cry," I said softly, patting her back. "If he doesn't come, he doesn't come. It's not a big deal. Worst case, I'll just go to the countryside with you. I want to stay with you." I knew, as someone from the future, that this whole era of upheaval would end in 1976. We just had to survive a few years and the Shen family would be cleared of all charges. But I didn't expect my words to set off an explosion. My father, who'd been silent this whole time, slammed his fist on the table and roared, "Nonsense. Do you know what going to the countryside means? You think it's some kind of vacation." His chest heaved with fury, his face turning deep red. "People like us who get sent down aren't the same as those educated youth who volunteer to go. We're class enemies, the lowest of the low. Anyone can come along and step on us. I've already had people look into it. The first group sent down last year. They couldn't eat enough, couldn't dress warmly, and had to do the filthiest, most backbreaking labor. Many of them got sick and died within months. Your mother and I have lived most of our lives. If we die, so be it.
But you?
You're still so young, in the prime of your life. We will never let you come suffer with us. Looking at my father's flushed, furious face and my mother's tear-streaked cheeks, my own eyes burned.
Then,
is there really no other way? Do we have to be sent down? My parents exchanged a glance, both wearing bitter smiles. It's too late, my father said, waving his hand in defeat. That report letter was sent up long ago. No one can change it now. He stood up with a heavy sigh. Chiu, start packing things today. Get ready early. I'm going out again to look for old friends, see if there's any way to at least keep Qingrao behind. I watched my father's retreating back. He seemed to have aged 10 years in a single moment, and looked at my mother's grief-stricken face beside me. In that moment, I made up my mind. Relying on other people was pointless. I had to find a way to save my parents and save myself. I helped my mother upstairs to pack for the countryside, though there wasn't much to bring. People getting exiled in this era could barely take anything with them. My parents had already hidden or given away anything valuable long ago. While my mother folded some worn clothes and sighed, I noticed an antique sandalwood jewelry box on the nightstand. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside, there were no fancy jewels, just a jade pendant shaped like a peace buckle, strung on a red cord. The jade was smooth and translucent, glowing faintly even in the dim light. The moment I saw it, my heart nearly stopped. In my previous life, I'd had a jade pendant exactly like this one. I'd picked it up from a street vendor, because something about it drew me in, and I'd worn it against my skin every single day until the moment I died. Could it be? My mother saw me staring and thought I just liked it. She wiped her tears and picked it up. This was left by your grandmother. It's high-quality glass-type jadeite, very valuable. I was saving it for your dowry, but now, we can't take it to the countryside. Someone would get jealous. Since you like it, keep it. Wear it close to your body and never let anyone see it. I held that warm jade in my hand, and inside, my mind was a storm. I wanted to tell my mother that father would probably come home empty-handed again, and I'd still end up going to the countryside with them. But looking at her exhausted face, I couldn't bring myself to say it. I understand, Mom. She finished packing quickly and went downstairs to cook dinner. The moment she left, I rushed to my room and locked the door. I found an embroidery needle. Without hesitating for even a second, I pricked my fingertip. A bright red drop of blood appeared. I stared at the jade pendant, my heart pounding, and carefully smeared the blood onto its surface. In my past life, that jade pendant wasn't just jewelry. It was a gateway to a magical space, a pocket dimension that could store supplies, with a spirit spring whose water could heal the dying, and a medicine field that could accelerate the growth of herbs. I was making a bet. I was betting this pendant was the same one from my previous life. If I was right, maybe I could rewrite the fate of my entire family. The blood touched the jade, and a miracle happened. Instead of sitting on the surface, the blood sank into the pendant like water being absorbed by a sponge. Then the jade emitted a soft white glow. My vision went white, and in the next instant, I was standing in a place that was unfamiliar, yet deeply familiar at the same time. My space. I was back in my space. It looked almost the same as I remembered the spirit spring, the medicine field. But the field I'd spent years cultivating in my past life, once full of rare herbs, was now completely barren. Not even a blade of grass. However, next to the field stood something new, a beautiful 4-story building in a traditional style that I'd never seen before. I pushed open the door to the first floor and nearly screamed. It was my luxury apartment from my previous life, every piece of it. Smart home system, refrigerator, color TV, washing machine, air conditioning. Everything exactly as I remembered. I ran up to the second floor. It was my private laboratory from the hospital, filled with the most advanced precision instruments, all neatly arranged. The third floor was my sterile operating room. The fourth floor was my storage room, except it was several times bigger than before. In my past life, I'd been too busy with surgeries to go shopping regularly. Since I had the space to store things, I developed a habit of buying everything in bulk: food, daily supplies, clothes, all organized and stocked up for emergencies. And all of it had traveled through time with me. Every item was sitting right there on the shelves. My only thought looking at those packed shelves was, what a shame. If I'd known I was going to transmigrate, I would have emptied an entire supermarket into this space. Especially considering this was an era where sanitary pads hadn't even been invented yet, and women were still using unhygienic cloth menstrual belts. As someone with a serious thing about cleanliness, I couldn't imagine surviving without proper supplies. I picked up a pack of my usual brand of pads from a shelf. And the moment I lifted it, something incredible happened. A brand new identical pack appeared in the empty spot. I froze. Was I seeing things? Did items here replenish themselves automatically? Did that mean everything in this space was unlimited? To test it, I grabbed a bag of chips, a box of cookies, and a bottle of cola from the food section. Sure enough, the second I turned around, the empty spots had already been filled with identical replacements. I was so excited I almost jumped up and down. I checked every floor. Lab supplies, surgical medications, even the food in my apartment's refrigerator. Anything I took was instantly replaced with a fresh copy. The only downside was that I'd been such a workaholic that my wardrobe was pathetic, just a few white coats and some casual outfits. The rest of my closet space had been used to stockpile tissue paper. But the original Shen Qingrao loved fashion, so her wardrobe probably had plenty of nice clothes I could move into the space later. I ran around giddily for a while, then rushed to the spirit spring and scooped up a handful of water. It was cool and sweet. The moment it hit my throat, a warm current spread through my entire body, flowing to every limb. The needle prick on my finger healed instantly. I felt refreshed, lighter, like I'd been reborn. The spring water worked exactly the same as before. In my past life, I'd used it to save countless patients that hospitals had given up on. In this era of extreme shortage, having an inexhaustible treasure space like this, what did I have to be afraid of anymore? Knock, 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 Xiao Rao, come eat dinner. My mother's voice and knocking jolted me back. In a flash, I returned to my room. The magical jade pendant was still clutched tightly in my hand. Coming, Mom. I quickly hung the pendant around my neck, tucked it carefully under my collar, and opened the door. Dinner that night, my mother couldn't eat either. Did you find anyone to help? She asked. My father shook his head, exhausted and defeated. It's useless. All those so-called brothers and friends, the moment they hear about our family situation, they either slam the door in my face or pretend they're not home. Can't even get a meeting. He let out a bitter laugh. Can't blame them, really. Our family is heading for disaster. Nobody wants to get dragged down with us. My usually gentle mother suddenly slammed her palm on the table. What kind of friends are these? A bunch of ungrateful wolves. Every single one of them benefited from our family's generosity over the years. Now that we're in trouble, they run faster than rabbits. Her eyes went red again as she thought about me being sent to the countryside, her precious daughter, who'd been raised so carefully, going to a place with no food, no warm clothes, where people would bully me. I quickly sat beside her and rubbed her back. Mom, don't get upset. It's not worth ruining your health over. Just then, someone knocked on the front gate. We all froze and looked at each other. It was late. Who would be visiting now? My father went to open the door. It was his childhood friend, Zhao Qiming. The two of them had grown up together, and over the years, my father had helped Zhao Qiming get his own small business going. The Zhao family had done quite well because of it. Zhao Qiming walked in with a big friendly smile plastered on his face, but the first thing he did was look at me. His eyes traveled up and down my body in a way that made my skin crawl. There was something calculating in his gaze, like he was appraising merchandise. Every alarm in my head went off, but I kept my face calm and greeted him politely the way the original Shen Qingrao would have. Uncle Zhao. Qingrao is getting more lovely every day, he said, nodding with that slimy smile. So much better than my wild daughter. My mother exchanged pleasantries, then casually asked why his wife and daughter hadn't come along. He explained that his mother-in-law was sick, so his wife had taken the kids to care for her. My father was genuinely touched that Zhao Qiming had come at a time like this, when everyone else was avoiding us. He invited him to sit and eat. Already ate, Zhao Qiming said, waving him off. Then he leaned in with a secretive expression. Old Shen, I came here tonight to bring you good news. Good news? My father looked blank. What good news could our family possibly have right now? Qingrao went on a blind date today, didn't she? My parents nodded glumly.
She did, but
it didn't work out. I knew it. Zhao Qiming slapped his thigh as if he'd predicted exactly this. With your family situation right now, people are running away from you, not toward you. Finding a good match for Qingrao? Nearly impossible. His voice dripped with concern, like a caring uncle worrying about his niece's future. But his eyes kept sliding over to me, looking me up and down like I was goods waiting to be sold. It made my whole body go cold. My parents were too consumed with worry to notice anything strange about him. My mother sighed. We're not even asking for much anymore. We just want someone with enough background and power to protect Qingrao so she doesn't have to come to the countryside with us. That was exactly the opening Zhao Qiming had been waiting for. He jumped right in. Speaking of someone with background and power to protect Qingrao, I actually have the perfect candidate. In this entire Yan city, he's the most powerful man there is. If he agrees, forget just protecting Qingrao. He could keep you two from being sent to the countryside at all. One word from him, and it's done. My parents' eyes lit up instantly.
Who?
Who is it? Zhao Qiming smiled smugly and slowly said the name, Qin Dachuan. The hope on my parents' faces died instantly. Their expressions turned dark. My father shot up from his chair and pointed right at Zhao Qiming's nose. Absolutely not. Out of the question. I hadn't been planning to marry anyone in the first place, but my father's explosive reaction made me curious. Who was this Qin Dachuan? I searched through the original owner's memories and found nothing. She'd never even heard of him. But for my mild-mannered father to react this violently, the man couldn't be anything good. Zhao Qiming didn't seem surprised by the outburst at all. He calmly picked up a teacup from the table, took a sip, and spoke in an unhurried tone. Old Shen, calm down. Hear me out. You know better than anyone what kind of man Qin Dachuan is. He's the chairman of Yan City's Revolutionary Committee right now. Every struggle session in this city is under his control. You understand how much power that is. Think about it. If Qingrao marries him and becomes Chairman Qin's family, your class status problem disappears overnight. Forget being sent to the countryside. One word from Chairman Qin, and your family could even get its old glory back. I raised an eyebrow. The Revolutionary Committee chairman? That much power? A thought flickered through my mind. Could I perhaps use that to my advantage? The thought had barely crossed my mind when my father exploded. Zhao Qiming, he shouted, shaking with rage, pointing toward the door. If you came here tonight to see us off, I welcome you. But if you came here to play matchmaker for that Qin Dachuan, then get out of my house right now. I'm telling you, I would rather take my daughter to the countryside myself than push her into that pit of fire. Zhao Qiming's face cycled between pale and flushed, but he swallowed his anger and put on a pained expression. Old Shen, why can't you see I'm trying to help? I've treated Qingrao like my own niece. I pulled strings to make this connection with Chairman Qin. She's only 18. If she goes to the countryside with you, her whole life is over. Can you live with that? He paused, his tone turning grave. Tomorrow is your last day. The day after, the exile paperwork comes down. You decide, marry Qingrao to Chairman Qin and the whole family stays in Yan City, or drag her to the countryside to suffer. Your choice. Then he stormed out without waiting for an answer. My father's face flickered with guilt as he watched his old friend leave, but my mother was furious. That Zhao Qiming has never done a single reliable thing in his life. If Qin Dachuan is so wonderful, why doesn't he marry off his own precious daughter Zhao Mingmi? Why is he pushing our Qingrao into the fire? What's he really after? My father sighed and sank back into his chair. You can't say that. Old Zhao means well. Nobody else is even willing to help us anymore. You're defending him. My mother was too angry to eat. Do you actually want to give our daughter to that Qin Dachuan? I'd rather die than let that happen. She stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind her. Left alone with my father, I walked over and asked quietly, Dad, who exactly is this Qin Dachuan? Why are you and Mom so upset? He looked up at me, pain and struggle written all over his face. It took him a long time to speak.
See out thou.
That Qingrao, he scum. His voice was low, barely containing his fury. When he was young, he was a street thug, uneducated, always fighting. Then somehow he got lucky, rode the wave of this era, used his smooth tongue to worm his way up, and climbed all the way to chairman of the Revolutionary Committee, his fists clenched. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is, he's been married twice. His voice went cold. Both wives are dead. Officially, they died of illness. But everyone in the neighborhood knows the truth. He beat them to death. He's a domestic abuser. Gets drunk and beats his wife, without any restraint. The first wife was beaten to death outright. The second wife couldn't take it anymore and hanged herself. My heart sank like a stone. Domestic violence. 2 dead wives. This wasn't just abuse. This was murder. This man was the lowest of the low. No wonder my parents reacted the way they did. Don't worry, Qingrao, my father said, his eyes blazing with determination. Even if it costs me my life, I will never let you fall into that man's hands. We'll die together as a family before I let you suffer that fate. Then he waved his hand, said he couldn't eat, and went upstairs, probably to comfort my mother. I sat alone at the dinner table, listening to the muffled sounds of arguing and crying drifting down from my parents' room. My heart ached. They were both tearing themselves apart with worry. All for me. This love, so heavy and unconditional, warmed me even though I wasn't their real daughter. And it was exactly this love that made me even more determined not to let them suffer in the countryside. My mind started racing. Marry Qingrao? Absolutely not. I'd rather die. But Zhao Qiming had made one valid point. Qingrao was currently the most powerful man in Yen City. If I could use him somehow, I might actually be able to protect my parents from exile. How to use him? First, I needed to learn everything about him. A street thug who'd clawed his way to power through scheming definitely had dirty secrets. If I could find leverage on him, I could make him cooperate. I filed that thought away and stood up. I looked at the nearly untouched dishes on the table and sighed. I ate a few quick bites to fill my stomach, then cleaned up everything. My parents hadn't eaten properly either, so I went to the kitchen, washed some millet, and started making a gentle stomach-soothing porridge for them. They were getting older, and their health wasn't great. If they really had to go to the countryside in a couple of days, their bodies would need to be in the best shape possible. While the porridge simmered, I secretly drew some spirit spring water from my space and added it to the pot. Then I took a bucket, dumped out all the water in the household water tank, and refilled it entirely with spirit spring water. For the next couple of days, everything they drank and ate would be infused with the spring's healing power. It would help strengthen their bodies. When the porridge was thick and fragrant, I ladled 2 bowls, paired them with the side dishes my mother had made earlier, and carried the tray upstairs. My father opened the door. He looked even more haggard than before, eyes rimmed red. Dad, I made some porridge. You and Mom should eat a little before bed. I peeked past him and saw my mother lying on the bed facing the wall, her shoulders shaking, still crying. I didn't go in. I just said a few comforting words to my father, reminded him to eat and rest early, and not to overthink things. He took the tray and closed the door. Through the wood, I heard my mother's tearful voice. Is that Qingrao? She made us porridge, my father said, his voice gentler now. Come on, sit up and eat something. Our daughter made it herself. My mother sat up immediately. The original Shen Qingrao had been pampered her whole life. She'd barely set foot in a kitchen, let alone cooked anything. They each took a spoonful. The moment the porridge touched their lips, an indescribable sweetness and fragrance bloomed across their taste buds. The millet was perfectly soft, the broth rich and thick. It slid down their throats and sent a wave of warmth spreading from their stomachs through their entire bodies. This porridge is incredible, my mother said, eyes wide with disbelief. Our daughter made this? Since when does she know how to cook? It really is delicious, my father agreed, taking another big gulp. He felt his spirits lift, as if the weight pressing on his chest had been washed away by that single bowl. It was the best millet porridge either of them had ever tasted in their lives. After finishing, my mother felt much better physically, but the tears came again as soon as she thought about my marriage situation. My father patted her hand. Don't think about it anymore. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll go out again. There has to be a way. They washed up and turned off the light. I'd been sitting in my room with my ears trained on their door the whole time. Only when their room went completely silent did I get off my bed. I changed into a set of dark casual clothes for my space, not common in this era, but close-fitting, practical, and inconspicuous in the dark. Then I quietly opened my door, slipped out of the house without a sound, and disappeared into the night. My target was clear: the Revolutionary Committee office. I was going to pay a visit to this so-called Chairman Qin. The streets of Yen City were deserted at night, with only dim street lamps swaying in the wind. Using the original owner's memories, I navigated through several alleys and quickly reached the Revolutionary Committee office at the end of the main street downtown. It was a row of gray brick buildings with red slogans painted on the walls and a wooden sign reading, Yen City Revolutionary Committee, hanging by the door. It was past 8 at night. The office should have been closed long ago, but one window at the very back still glowed with light. Someone was inside. After checking that no one was around, I crept along the shadows toward that window. The moment I got close, I heard voices. One of them I recognized immediately, Zhao Qiming. My brow furrowed. What was he doing here this late? I held my breath and peeked through a gap in the window. Zhao Qiming stood with his back to me, bowing and scraping before someone sitting in a chair. His large body blocked my view of the other person's face. Chairman Qin, I've taken care of everything you asked, Zhao Qiming said in a disgustingly flattering tone. Chairman Qin. So the man behind him was Qin Dachuan. I pressed my ear closer. I already ruined Shen Qingrao's blind date with the Xie boy today, Zhao Qiming continued proudly. I had someone send word to the Xie family that Shen Qingrao is the woman you've chosen, and anyone who dares compete will pay with their life. That Xie kid is smart. The second he heard, he packed up and fled to the countryside with his mother overnight. He didn't even show up. My blood went cold. So that was it. I'd wondered why Xie Qinan had disappeared without so much as a word. It wasn't cowardice or cold feet. It was Zhao Qiming and Qin Dachuan pulling strings behind the scenes. That backstabbing snake. I swallowed my rage and kept listening. After I ruined the date, I went to the Shen house to feel things out. Zhao Qiming said, Chairman Qin, you have no idea how stubborn old Shen Junbai is. The moment I mentioned your name, he nearly bit my head off. He'd rather take his daughter to the countryside than let her marry you. Then came a rough, ugly voice dripping with arrogance. Qin Dachuan.
Humph.
Shen Junbai? He doesn't know what's good for him. I'm doing his family a favor by wanting his daughter. If he won't agree, I'll go take her by force. What's he going to do about it? Zhao Qiming quickly talked him down. No, Chairman Qin. You can't do that. Kidnapping a woman would look terrible if word got out. And Shen Junbai may look meek, but he's actually tough as nails. If you corner him, he'll fight you to the death, and our whole plan falls apart. Plan? My eyes narrowed. What plan? This was about more than just marrying me? Qin Dachuan sounded irritated. Can't do this, can't do that. Then what the hell can we do? Zhao Qiming lowered his voice and leaned in to whisper. I could only catch fragments, exile paperwork, show up at the door, force his hand. I tried to lean closer, but Qin Dachuan suddenly stood up, facing the window. I barely ducked back in time, pressing myself flat against the cold wall, heart hammering. Footsteps moved toward the window and stopped just short of it. Then Qin Dachuan spoke in a chilling voice. Zhao Qiming, you'd better not be working with Shen Junbai to set me up. Mayor Meng Xinmin has been watching me like a hawk lately. If he catches wind of this, I'm finished. Zhao Qiming swore up and down. Chairman Qin, how could you say that? The report letter that got the Shen family labeled as capitalists, I wrote it with my own hands. Why would I turn around and help them against you? Everything I've done has been for your benefit. Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. This man, the one my father had treated like a brother his entire life, had personally shoved our family into the abyss. That animal. I was shaking with fury. My nails dug into my palms, so hard I nearly drew blood. I wanted to burst in there and tear his lying face apart. But reason held me back. Charging in now wouldn't get me revenge, it would only get me caught. To truly expose Zhao Qiming and drag him and Qin Dachuan down together, I needed more evidence. I forced myself to breathe and keep listening. Zhao Qiming lowered his voice further and laid out his scheme to Qin Dachuan. Think about it, Chairman Qin. Our revolutionary committee has only been around for less than a year. We have the authority on paper, but in reality, no money, no grain, no solid foundation. He won't let go, so we can't touch it. If we want to take power from him and win public support, we need to do something concrete, like distributing grain to the people. But where do we get the money and grain for that? The only option is to squeeze it out of these capitalist families. Qin Dachuan cut in impatiently. Get to the damn point. The point is the Shen family, Zhao Qiming said with a sly laugh. Our original plan was to label them capitalists and confiscate their property for revolutionary funds. But that old fox Shen Junbai already hid most of the family fortune. Nobody knows where it is. What he's got left, he says he's saving as Shen Qingrao's dowry. That's why I came up with this idea for you. If you marry Shen Qingrao, that dowry becomes yours automatically. And that's only the first part. His voice turned sinister. Shen Junbai's only weak spot is his precious daughter. Once we have Shen Qingrao in our hands, are you afraid he won't hand over every last coin he's hidden? Without leverage, that man's lips are sealed tight. Shen Qingrao is his biggest weakness. Now I understood everything.
This was never about marriage.
It was a conspiracy from start to finish. The report letter, the exile, sabotaging my blind date, the forced marriage proposal, all of it was designed to steal our family's wealth. And the mastermind behind it all was Zhao Qiming, the ungrateful traitor my father had treated like blood. Qin Dachuan was convinced.
Good.
Good thinking, Zhao Qiming. Let's do it your way. He slammed his hand on the table. Tomorrow, I'm going to the Shen house myself. If Shen Junbai still doesn't cooperate, he'll see what happens when he crosses me. Zhao Qiming piled on the flattery. Chairman Qin is brilliant. The Shen family is lucky to have your attention. Every word making my stomach turn. They were wrapping up. I'd heard enough. I started to slip away. But the moment I moved, my foot hit something, a loose brick. It made a small clicking sound. In the dead silence of the night, it was as loud as a gunshot. Who's out there? Both men shouted at once. My heart seized. I looked around. Nothing to hide behind. No bushes, no cover anywhere. The footsteps inside were getting closer, almost at the door. Without time to think, I focused my mind, and in an instant I vanished from the spot, straight into my space. The second I entered my space, I heard the office door creak open and hurried footsteps rush outside. Meow! A stray cat let out a sharp cry at exactly the right moment. Zhao Qiming exhaled with relief. Oh, it's just a wild cat. Scared me half to death this late at night. Qin Dachuan still seemed uneasy. He walked around outside checking, found nothing, and cursed. Damn cat, trying to scare me. He was clearly worried someone had overheard their scheming. He told Zhao Qiming to leave. That's enough for tonight. Tomorrow morning, come to my place early. We'll go to the Shen house together. I want to see whether that old fool Shen Junbai cares more about his money or his daughter's life. Yes, sir, Chairman Qin. I'll be at your door bright and early. Zhao Qiming's groveling voice faded as his footsteps disappeared. Then I heard the window slam shut and a lock click into place. I waited a few more minutes in my space to be absolutely sure, then slipped back out. I peeked through the window. The office was dark and empty.
Qin Dachuan was gone.
Now that Zhao Qiming wasn't blocking my view anymore, I'd actually gotten a clear look at Qin Dachuan's face earlier. I just hadn't had time to process it in the panic. Now that I thought about it, my stomach turned. I'd thought Zhao Qiming's weasel face was the textbook look of a villain. But compared to Qin Dachuan, Zhao Qiming was practically handsome. Qin Dachuan was, to put it mildly, an assault on the eyes. His face was wide and flat like someone had smashed it with a frying pan. All his features were crammed into the center with no sense of proportion. His eyebrows were thick and messy, like two fat caterpillars. One eye was huge with too much white showing and a tiny pinprick pupil that gave off an eerie cold light. The other eye was so narrow it was practically invisible. His nose was swollen and covered in blackheads, and his mouth enormous, with thick cracked lips like two risen dough buns stuck to his face. When he talked, you could see rows of teeth stained yellow from smoking. Even for someone like me, a surgeon who'd seen every kind of deformity and disease, just remembering that face made me gag. I ducked back into my space, ran to the spirit spring, rinsed my mouth several times, and gulped down huge mouthfuls of water before the nausea finally settled. 2 lifetimes, and I'd never seen anyone who pushed the limits of human ugliness quite like that. I almost had to respect Zhao Qiming. How did he manage to shower that face with flattery, without flinching? The man had nerves of steel. Then I heard the sound of the courtyard gate being locked. Qin Dachuan had left the building for good. I slipped out of my space and followed him at a safe distance. I wanted to see where this monster lived. Instead of heading toward the residential area, he turned into a pitch-dark alley. After several twists and turns, he stopped in front of a large, impressive-looking mansion on a street corner. I recognized this place from the original owner's memories. It used to belong to a wealthy landlord. Not long ago, that landlord's entire family had been publicly denounced and driven to the countryside, and the Revolutionary Committee had sealed the property. The official seal strips were still plastered across the door. What was Qin Dachuan doing here? As I watched, he glanced around nervously, pulled out a ring of keys, and smoothly unlocked the front gate. He slipped inside and locked it again from within. I stood before the house, sizing up the walls, 2 or 3 meters high. I pulled a handkerchief from my pocket and tied it across my face, leaving only my eyes exposed. Then I backed up a few steps, sprinted, kicked off the wall, grabbed the top edge, and swung myself over with one fluid motion. In my previous life, I trained in ancient martial arts whenever I had free time, partly to stay fit for my demanding job, partly for self-defense. And I'd just drunk plenty of spirit spring water, which had already improved this delicate body considerably. Scaling a wall was nothing. I landed inside the courtyard just in time to see Qin Dachuan push open the main building's door and disappear inside. I followed like a soundless cat, my steps featherlight. The door was left slightly ajar. I pushed it open a crack wider and peered in. The room was empty, just a few broken pieces of furniture covered in thick dust. The landlord's house had been thoroughly ransacked. Nothing of value remained. But where was Qin Dachuan? He'd walked straight into this room. There was only one door, and every window was shut tight with no sign of being opened. A living, breathing man couldn't just vanish into thin air. Then it hit me. In the old days, wealthy families often built hidden rooms or underground tunnels in their homes to hide valuables or escape danger. This house had a secret room. I slipped inside and started searching every inch, walls, floor, furniture. I knocked on surfaces, checked for hollow spots, examined every corner. I was about to give up when my eyes landed on something odd near one wall, a brass candle holder embedded in the brick. In traditional architecture, decorative items always came in pairs: stone lions at gates, vases on shelves, paintings on walls. Everything symmetrical. But this large wall had just one lone candle holder. That was strange. Anything that breaks the pattern deserves suspicion. I reached out and turned the candle holder.
Click.
The wall in front of me slowly split open from the center, sliding apart to reveal a dark stone doorway wide enough for 2 people to walk through side by side. But before I could explore it, I heard movement. Qin Dachuan was coming back out. I didn't hesitate and flashed into my space instantly. From inside, I heard him muttering to himself as he walked out. "My precious little treasures, just sit tight in there for a few more days. Once I get my hands on the Shen family's dowry, I'll move you all out. Then my mission will be complete, and I'll be living the good life." Haha. Mission? What mission? Before I could hear more, he went quiet. There was a low rumbling sound, something heavy sliding across stone. Then the front door opened and closed. Silence. I waited a while longer, then came out of my space. In the courtyard, I heard the front gate being locked from outside. He was gone for the night.
Perfect.
I went back to the main room and stared at the wall that had moved. The secret room was definitely behind it. But where was the switch? I circled the room again, studying every detail. Then my gaze fell on that same brass candle holder. I reached out and turned it.
Click.
The wall slid open again, revealing that dark stone doorway. I'd found it. Without a moment's hesitation, I walked straight in. Behind the stone door was a staircase leading down into total darkness. The air smelled damp and moldy. I pulled a high-powered flashlight from my space, switched it on, and carefully made my way down. About 20 or 30 steps later, I reached the bottom, a massive underground cellar. I swept the flashlight around and nearly gasped out loud. The entire cellar was packed from floor to ceiling with wooden crates of every size, crammed so tightly there was barely room to move. I walked to the nearest large crate and lifted the lid. A blinding golden light burst out. When my eyes adjusted, I saw what was inside, row after row of neatly stacked gold bars, filling the entire box. I'd never been short on money in my previous life, but I'd never seen this much gold piled together in one place. The sheer visual impact was overwhelming. I opened more crates. Some held ancient paintings and calligraphy scrolls stacked like small mountains. Others were filled with precious gems, jade, agate, pearls, gemstones, all glittering under my flashlight. Still more contained gold and silver jewelry, antique ornaments. My jaw dropped. How much had Qin Dachuan stolen from the people? The value of everything in this cellar was beyond calculation. In an inconspicuous corner, I found a small locked leather case. I pulled tools from my space and popped it open in seconds. No treasure inside, just several thick notebooks and a stack of letters. I opened the first notebook. It was a detailed ledger, recording every item in every crate, quantities, types, and where each one had come from. Every single entry was something Qin Dachuan had secretly confiscated while using his position as Revolutionary Committee chairman to denounce landlords and capitalists. These revolutionary gains were supposed to be reported and turned over to the state. Instead, he'd hidden them all here. I set down the ledger and picked up the letters. The envelopes had no names or addresses. I opened one and read it. My blood froze. These were secret communications between Qin Dachuan and enemy agents. Someone using the code name Black Bear had been giving Qin Dachuan detailed instructions, which landlord families to target, which specific assets to seize, and how to transfer the stolen goods afterward. Everything was laid out in black and white. Qin Dachuan wasn't just a corrupt, greedy official. He was a spy, a traitor embedded inside the revolutionary system, working for enemy forces. Everything he'd been hoarding, all these priceless national treasures, he planned to smuggle out of the country and hand over to the enemy. I slammed my fist against a crate, shaking with fury. No wonder a brainless street thug had climbed all the way to chairman of the Revolutionary Committee. Without enemy agents backing him from the shadows, he never could have done it. In my previous life, I'd studied history thoroughly. I knew that during this turbulent era, enormous amounts of China's precious cultural relics and wealth were lost overseas through exactly this kind of scheme. Every time I'd seen Chinese national treasures displayed in foreign museums like war trophies, it made my heart bleed. Bringing those treasures home was a wish shared by every Chinese person. And now, right in front of me, mountains of gold, silver, and irreplaceable cultural artifacts that represented thousands of years of Chinese civilization, all of it about to be smuggled abroad if Qin Dachuan had his way. Not a chance. Not while I was standing here. I made my decision instantly. In the current political chaos, even if I handed these things over to the authorities, there was no guarantee they'd be safe. Other parasites like Qin Dachuan might just pocket them instead. Better that I keep them for now. When the country stabilized and peace returned, I'd give every last piece back to the nation, exactly as I'd found them. As for the evidence, I carefully stored the ledger and the spy letters separately in my space. With this ironclad proof, I would make sure Qin Dachuan the traitor met a fitting end. Then I looked at the cellar full of treasures, took a deep breath, and focused my mind. Take it all, One by one, as if lifted by an invisible hand, the wooden crates vanished from the floor. In just a few minutes, the cellar that had been stuffed to bursting was completely empty. Not even a scrap of paper remained. I checked everything one last time, then left the secret room. I closed the stone door, turned the candle holder back to its original position, and restored everything to the way it had been. The front gate was locked from the outside, but that wasn't a problem. I scaled the wall again and dropped silently to the other side. The night was deep and the streets were dead quiet. I got my bearings, and instead of heading home, I turned in a different direction. Qingrao had been so careful about hiding his loot here that his own home probably had nothing worth checking. I could skip his house. My next stop was the mayor's residence. Since Qingrao himself had mentioned that Mayor Meng Xinmin was his biggest enemy, the evidence that could destroy Qingrao would be most effective in the mayor's hands. I knew from the original owner's memories that the mayor lived near the city government compound, in a modest two-story building that was easy to spot. I headed that way, navigating from memory, but along the route, I happened to pass by Zhao Qiming's house. His family lived in a common courtyard compound. Everything was dark except for a faint light still glowing behind Zhao Qiming's window. Still awake at this hour? Thinking about that disgusting two-faced snake, everything he'd done to my family, writing that report letter, conspiring with Qingrao, my feet stopped moving. Since I was already here, it would be a waste to walk away empty-handed. Tonight, I was going to collect some interest from the Zhao family first. I slipped into the shadows of the courtyard without making a sound. I crept to the Zhao family's window under cover of darkness. The lights were still on inside, and despite Zhao Qiming's earlier claim that his wife had taken the children to her mother's house, the whole family was right there, all four of them huddled around a small table, whispering with greedy, excited faces. His wife, Su Milan, spoke first, her voice sharp and demanding. You helped Qingrao with such a huge favor this time. You can't just let him keep everything. Why should the Shen family's wealth all go to him? We did all the legwork. We deserve a share. Zhao Qiming frowned nervously. Keep your voice down. Qingrao is ruthless. We should be grateful to get even a small piece. Don't be too greedy or he'll turn on us. He paused. Besides, over the years I've already taken plenty of nice things from the Shen family behind their backs. We're doing fine. Then their daughter Zhao Mingni piped up, her voice shrill and vicious. I don't care about any of that. I just want one thing. Make sure Shen Qingrao marries that ugly monster Qingrao, her face twisted with hatred. Who does she think she is? Just because her family has a little money? Every time she got new jewelry or new clothes, she'd parade it in front of me. Then she'd hand me her rejects like she was doing me a favor, as if that wasn't humiliating enough. I've hated her for years. The thought of her being married off to that disgusting man makes me want to laugh. I hope he beats her every single day, beats her to death. My eyes went cold. In the original owner's memories, she and Zhao Mingni had been best friends since childhood. The original Shen Qingrao was a simple, generous girl. Whenever she got something nice, new fabric, new jewelry, if Zhao Mingni said she liked it, the original owner would give it to her without a second thought. And all along, Zhao Mingni had seen that kindness as showing off and humiliation. How could a human heart be this rotten? Then their son Zhao Tianxi chimed in with his own poison. My sister's right. I've always hated that stuck-up Shen Shaoan too. Just because he read a few books, he acted all superior and tried to boss me around like he was my big brother. Disgusting. Too bad he got sent off to join the army. I would have loved to watch that scrawny bookworm get bullied in the countryside. Maybe he'll get sick and die out on the frontier. As long as he suffers, I'm happy. Zhao Qiming didn't scold either of his children. He just smiled with a calculating look and told them to keep quiet. Don't worry. Once Qingrao raids the Shen house tomorrow, all their things will be ours. You can pick whatever you want. Really? Thanks, Dad. Both children were overjoyed. After the kids went to their rooms, Su Milan sidled up to her husband. When they raid the house, you need to get me Huichiyu's jewelry collection. That was my mother's name. I've always been disgusted by her fake generosity, giving me her worst pieces while showing off the good stuff. I want her things. I want to wear. them right in front of her face and watch her choke on it. Zhao Qiming put his arm around her waist and kissed her cheek with a slimy grin.
Don't worry.
Tomorrow morning I'll go to the Shen house and offer to safeguard their belongings before they head to the countryside. Tell them I'm afraid their things will get confiscated. On the road. Once I get everything into our hands and they're shipped off to the countryside, it's all ours. Oh, you're so clever. Su Milin threw her arms around his neck. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made. They flirted for another minute, then turned off the light and went to bed. Outside the window, I was shaking, not with fear, but with a fury so cold it burned. Every single one of them. A family of ungrateful wolves. In the original owner's memories, my father had treated Zhao Qiming like his own brother. He'd raised his children to treat Zhao Mingni and Zhao Tianxi like family. So the original Shen Qingrao had given Zhao Mingni anything she asked for without hesitation. My brother Shen Shaoan had tried to push Zhao Tianxi to study harder because he genuinely cared about the boy's future. My mother had given Su Milin clothes and jewelry and lent them money from our family savings when the Zhao family business was struggling. The Shen family had given them everything, heart and soul. And in the eyes of these ungrateful parasites, all that generosity was suffering they'd endured. They felt no gratitude whatsoever. They'd been bleeding the Shen family dry while plotting to steal our fortune and cursing every member of our family behind our backs. From the oldest to the youngest, rotten to the core.
Fine.
Then they shouldn't blame me for what comes next. I waited until the house went completely dark and silent. Then I reached into my space and pulled out a small spray bottle from my laboratory. Inside was a powerful knockout agent I developed in my past life out of boredom, originally meant for uncooperative lab animals. It was colorless, odorless, and worked through the respiratory system. One tiny whiff and a person would fall into a deep coma for at least 12 hours. I put on a mask and gloves for my space, then quietly pried open a window. First, I sprayed a light mist into Zhao Mingni and Zhao Tianxi's room. Then Zhao Qiming and Su Milin's room. Finally, a few puffs into the main living area, just to be safe. Within moments, the faint sounds of snoring faded to nothing. The entire Zhao household fell into dead silence. I waited a few more minutes outside, then walked in through the front door like I owned the place. Standing in the pitch-black living room, I listened to the slow, even breathing coming from all 3 bedrooms. A cold smile spread across my face. Now then, where should I start collecting my interest? I pushed open the door to Zhao Qiming and Su Milin's bedroom first. A nauseating smell hit me, sweat mixed with something I'd rather not describe. I nearly threw up on the spot. I shone my flashlight toward the bed and immediately regretted it. The 2 of them were tangled together completely naked, frozen in a position that burned itself into my eyes. Apparently, I'd sprayed the knockout drug right when they were in the middle of their exercise, and the drug hit so fast they'd passed out exactly like that. Fighting back the urge to vomit, I grabbed the blanket from the foot of the bed and threw it over both of them. Out of sight, out of mind. Only then did I start properly examining the room. The Zhao family had always lived comfortably thanks to my family's support. The bedroom was decently furnished, a rosewood vanity, a carved wardrobe, a landscape painting on the wall. My eyes landed on several jewelry boxes on the vanity. I opened the largest one. The moment the lid came up, my fury ignited. Inside sat a phoenix hairpin inlaid with kingfisher feathers and gemstones, along with a matching pair of pure gold bracelets. These were my mother's. She'd taken them out just 2 days ago, saying they were part of the dowry she'd prepared for me. I remembered clearly now. A few days back, Zhao Qiming had visited our house to check on us. After he left, my father told my mother that Zhao Qiming had warned him it would be dangerous to carry valuables during the exile. Red guards might confiscate everything on the road. Zhao Qiming had generously offered to safeguard our things until the situation calmed down. My father had been genuinely grateful, believing his old friend was looking out for us. What a joke. This wasn't a friend. This was a hungry wolf who'd been eyeing our family all along. He'd taken the items and placed them right on his wife's vanity, bold as anything. They'd never planned to give any of it back. Heartless scum, I muttered under my breath. I swept every jewelry box on that vanity into my space without a shred of hesitation. These were my mother's treasures, many of them heirlooms from her own family, and Sue Mylan had claimed them like war trophies. She wanted them?
Fine.
I'd make sure she never laid eyes on them again. Next, the wardrobe. I pulled it open and found it packed with clothes. Several were high-quality kipayos and dresses that I immediately recognized as my mother's. My mother had given them to Sue Mylan out of kindness, thinking the woman had nothing nice to wear. Sue Mylan had kept them all, probably saving them to show off once our family was destroyed. I didn't bother sorting through anything. With a thought, every piece of clothing in the wardrobe vanished, leaving nothing but bare hangers. Then I started searching the room thoroughly. A man as greedy and cautious as Zhao Qiming would never leave money or valuables in the open. I tapped the walls, checked the floorboards, and finally looked under the large rosewood bed. There it was, a locked wooden chest. The lock was child's play. I had it open in seconds. On top was a thick stack of cash wrapped in wax paper, at least several thousand. In this era, those tickets were sometimes more valuable than cash. The fact that Zhao Qiming had accumulated this much showed exactly how much he'd been leeching off my family over the years. I took it all. I pulled one out and started reading by flashlight. After just a few lines, my face went dark. These letters were evidence of Zhao Qiming's involvement in human trafficking. On top of everything else, this man had been running a side business as a middleman in a massive kidnapping and trafficking network. The letters spelled it out in horrifying detail. When some village family wanted a son to carry on the family name, he'd arranged to get them a baby boy and collect a finder's fee. When some bachelor in a remote mountain area couldn't afford a wife, he'd have a young woman kidnapped and sold to them. He even supplied clean, virgin girls to wealthy men with particular tastes. His victims came from everywhere: runaways, girls sold by their own impoverished parents, and women who'd been drugged on the street and dragged away by his accomplices. The letters included transaction amounts and locations. Every entry was soaked in blood. Behind each one was a shattered family and a ruined life. This animal. My hands trembled as I gripped the papers. I'd thought Zhao Qiming was just a greedy, ungrateful backstabber. I hadn't imagined he was also a human trafficker. A man like this deserved to be executed 100 times over. I fought down the urge to march into his bedroom and end him right there. Instead, I carefully stored the letters alongside the evidence against Qin Dachuan. These would be the nails in Zhao Qiming's coffin. But after tearing the room apart, I'd only found the gold hairpin, the bracelets, and this chest. My mother had prepared several boxes worth of dowry for me. Someone as greedy as Zhao Qiming wouldn't have stopped at just a few pieces. Where was the rest? I stepped out of the master bedroom, thinking. My next target, Zhao Mingni's room. I pushed open Zhao Mingni's bedroom door, already bracing myself. The room was small but decorated with care: movie posters on the walls, a pretty music box on the desk, pink bed curtains. If I hadn't heard those venomous words with my own ears, I'd never have guessed someone with such a dark, hateful heart lived here. I went straight for the wardrobe. Sure enough, inside hung several brand-new Western-style dresses, the latest fashions the original owner had specially ordered from Shanghai not long ago. The original Shen Qingrao had barely worn them herself before Zhao Mingni came over, eyed them with undisguised greed, and sighed about how lucky Qingrao was to have such pretty things. The soft-hearted original owner immediately offered one as a gift. Zhao Mingni had taken it with fake reluctance, saying, "Oh, I couldn't possibly. They're so expensive." Now I knew the truth. She hadn't felt embarrassed at all. She'd felt the original owner hadn't given her enough. With a cold smile and a single thought, I swept every piece of clothing in that wardrobe into my space, hers and the stolen ones alike. I wanted to see the look on her face tomorrow morning when she woke up without a single thing to wear. Next, the desk. There sat a locked diary. The lock was flimsy. I popped it open with a hairpin. The handwriting inside was elegant. The content was poison. Entry after entry of pure jealousy, hatred, and curses aimed at the original owner. She called Qingrao a cheap woman for wearing new clothes. She said the gifts Qingrao gave her were humiliating charity, She raged that Xie Qinan, brother Qinan, was going on a blind date with Qingrao instead of her. She celebrated the idea of Qingrao being married off to Qin Dachuan, writing that she couldn't wait to see Qingrao tortured to death, page after page, every word dripping with venom. The original owner had genuinely treated this girl as her closest friend. She'd shared everything: food, clothes, jewelry. At school, when anyone bullied Zhao Mingni, it was the original Shen Qingrao who stood up for her first. And this was how the snake repaid her, cursing her to die behind her back. And, in reality, the original owner had died because of their conspiracy. My gaze dropped to the desk drawer. I pulled it open and found exactly what I'd half expected: a small cloth doll with the name, Shen Qingrao, stitched onto it in crooked red thread. The original owner's birth date and time were written in ink on the back. And the doll's chest was covered, absolutely covered, in needles. A voodoo doll. She'd been sticking pins in it, cursing the original owner to die. How twisted could one person be? I gripped that little doll, my hands shaking with rage. I turned to look at Zhao Mingni sleeping on the bed like a dead pig, her delicate face looking so innocent in the dim light. Innocent? To hell with innocent. I walked to the bedside, raised my hand, and slapped her across the face with everything I had. The crack echoed through the silent room. She only let out a small grunt in her drugged sleep and didn't stir. One slap wasn't nearly enough. I thought about every hurt the original owner had suffered, every poisonous word in that diary, every needle in that doll. I slapped her again, and again, and again. Left, right, controlling my strength so she'd feel the pain but wouldn't wake up. Within moments, her face swelled up like a balloon, both cheeks puffing out until she looked like a pig. Only then did some of the fury in my chest begin to ease. I pocketed the needle-studded doll. I'd find a way later to let Zhao Mingni know how it felt to be on the receiving end. Before leaving, I noticed her vanity. I pulled open the drawer. Mostly cheap face cream and hair ties. But then a red velvet box caught my eye. Inside lay a jade pendant, finest mutton fat white jade carved with auspicious cloud patterns, cool and smooth to the touch. I recognized it immediately. This was the single most valuable piece in the dowry my mother had prepared for me. An heirloom from my grandmother, said to have calming and beautifying properties. Priceless. Zhao Qiming had claimed he was safeguarding our dowry, and the most precious piece had ended up in his daughter's drawer. I took the jade and stored it in my space. Then I left that sickening room without looking back. Zhao Tianxi's room was next, but I didn't waste much time on that brat. I pulled a brand new Shanghai brand wristwatch off his wrist, grabbed a few new clothes from his wardrobe, and walked out. 3 rooms searched, and I still hadn't found most of my dowry. My mother had prepared several boxes worth of items. Where had that old fox Zhao Qiming hidden the rest? I stood in the living room, frowning, and searched through the original owner's memories for any clue about the Zhao house. Then a forgotten fragment surfaced. Years ago, the original owner had come here to play with Zhao Mingni. During a game of hide-and-seek, she'd wandered into the kitchen and spotted a trapdoor in the floor, a panel that could be pulled open. She'd been curious and was about to lift it when Zhao Mingni came rushing in, grabbed her arm, and dragged her out, insisting the kitchen was dirty. Looking back, that reaction had been way too nervous for a simple storage cellar. What couldn't be seen down there? Unless it was hiding something that absolutely had to stay secret. My eyes lit up. My dowry was almost certainly down there. I turned and headed straight for the kitchen. The Zhao family kitchen was tiny and dark, reeking of stale grease and spoiled food. I didn't care. I headed straight for the corner I'd seen in the original owner's memories. It was piled with firewood and junk, looking completely ordinary. I shoved everything aside and found floor tiles underneath. It seemed Zhao Qiming had replaced the old trapdoor to make it less obvious. I knelt down and tapped the tiles. One sounded hollow. I pried up the edge with tools from my space and found a wooden board underneath with a small iron ring embedded in it. I grabbed the ring and pulled hard. The board came up with a groan, revealing a dark hole. Damp, moldy air rushed out. Found it. I climbed down the crude wooden ladder. The cellar below was small, maybe 7 or 8 square meters, just tall enough for me to stand straight. When my flashlight swept across it, my breath caught. The tiny space was packed full. Against one wall stood 7 or 8 large wooden crates. I pried the first one open and froze. No gold or jewels. Instead, a whole crate of brand new fabric. Dacron, corduroy, khaki cloth, in all colors and patterns, all the trendiest materials of the era. These were for my dowry. My mother had prepared them, saying a girl needed plenty of new clothes so she wouldn't be looked down on after marriage. I opened the other crates. New quilts, pillows, bed sheets, all printed with big red, double happiness characters. Enamel vases, thermos bottles, and other household items for a bride. Leaning against the crates were 2 brand new butterfly sewing machines and a phoenix bicycle. Every single item, my dowry. All of it. Zhao Qiming, that bastard. He'd said he was safeguarding these things. In reality, he'd planned to steal every last piece. I gritted my teeth, fighting the urge to storm upstairs and drag him out of bed. Instead, I took a breath and swept every dowry crate into my space. Not one left behind. That cleared about half the cellar. But on the other side sat over a dozen more crates and burlap sacks. What were these? I opened one sack. Watches tumbled out, Shanghai brand, Seagull brand, Jewel Flower brand, new and used, men's and women's styles. At least 100 of them piled together. Another sack was stuffed with radios. I was stunned. In this era, a single watch or radio was a luxury most families could only dream of. Where had Zhao Qiming gotten so many? I opened more crates. Some were filled with neatly bundled stacks of cash. Others held gold bars and silver coins. One contained a heap of jewelry, gold, silver, jade, even gemstones that were clearly worth a fortune. The sheer volume was numbing. There was no way he'd accumulated all of this just by leeching off our family. Then I remembered the letters I'd found upstairs, the human trafficking correspondence. A terrible thought formed in my mind. All of this money, all these valuables, were they the profits from selling kidnapped women and children? Had he traded other people's sons and daughters for gold and watches and cash, then stashed it all down here to feed his family's greed? The thought made my skin crawl. Looking at the mountain of wealth, I could only see blood and tears on every single item. I wouldn't leave this family of monsters a single cent. With one focused thought, I absorbed every remaining crate and sack into my space. I'd keep these things temporarily. When the time came, I'd turn them over to the state or use them to help the victims. It was the least I could do. In minutes, the stuffed cellar was completely empty. Not even a thread remained. I climbed back up, replaced the wooden board, fitted the tiles back perfectly, and piled the firewood and junk on top again, just as it had been. The big targets were handled. Now for the small stuff. I looked around the Zhao house with a cold smile. Since this family loved taking other people's things so much, tonight I'd let them experience what it felt like to have their own home emptied out. Starting with the living room, the dining table, the chairs, the dish cabinet. Nothing valuable, but why leave them the satisfaction?
Gone. Gone. Gone.
Then the kitchen. There was a big iron wok on the stove with leftover food still in it. A cutting board and knife on the counter. A small sack of white flour in the corner, half a bucket of soybean oil, and various seasonings. In this era, fine flour and cooking oil were ration luxuries. Sue Mylan was a penny pincher who'd scraped and saved for every gram. I swept through like a storm. Wok, taken. Knife and cutting board, taken. Flour, taken. Oil, taken. Salt, soy sauce, vinegar, every jar and bottle, taken. If it could be eaten or used, it went into my space. I didn't leave them a single grain. Looking at the bare stove afterward, I thought about tearing the whole thing apart, but that would make too much noise. I'd let it slide for now. I dusted off my hands and headed back to Zhao Tianxi's room. Earlier, I'd only taken his watch and some new clothes. Looking back, that had been far too generous. This time, my target was his bed. Zhao Tianxi's bed was a simple wooden plank bed with a mattress and quilt on top. I pulled off the blanket, then swept the whole thing, mattress, boards, and all into my space. Just the bare bed frame left standing there, looking pathetic. Actually, why leave even that?
Gone.
His desk and chair?
Gone.
The award certificates on the wall? I ripped them all down. When I was finished, Zhao Tianxi's room contained nothing but 4 bare walls and his unconscious body lying on the cold floor. I went back to Zhao Mingni's room next. Same treatment. Bed, desk, chair, all taken. Posters ripped off the walls. I was merciful enough to leave her the pajamas she was wearing. She lay on the floor with her swollen pig face, sleeping soundly. The sight brought me another wave of satisfaction. Finally, I returned to Zhao Qiming and Su Milan's room for the finishing touches. These two were the masterminds.
No merci.
I walked to the bed, looked at the 2 naked bodies tangled together under the blanket, and felt nothing but disgust. I grabbed the edge of the quilt and rolled both of them off the bed onto the cold cement floor. They grunted in their sleep, shifted positions, and kept right on snoring. Then I looked at the rosewood bed.
Gone.
Vanity table gone. Wardrobe gone. Anything made of wood that could be moved, I took it all. Then I looked down at the 2 of them still wrapped cozily in their blanket on the floor. Too comfortable for them. I reached down and yanked the blanket away. Into the space it went. Still not enough. Their clothes were scattered nearby, shirts, pants, underwear, everything. I collected every last piece and stored it all. When I stepped back to admire my work, the room held nothing but 2 naked people curled together in an indecent position on a bare cement floor. I brushed off my hands and smiled. I wanted this family of ungrateful wolves to wake up and find themselves with absolutely nothing. I wanted them to feel what it was like to fall from comfort into emptiness. I wanted them to understand that taking things that don't belong to you comes with a price. I checked my watch. It was getting late, and I still had important business to finish. I left the Zhao house without a backward glance. Instead of heading home, I walked quickly toward the mayor's residence. It was time to deliver the evidence that would destroy Qin Dachuan and Zhao Qiming. Mayor Meng Xinmin lived near the city government compound in a modest 2-story house. I found it easily. The area was quiet, and the courtyard wall was low. I checked the 2nd floor and noticed one window, probably the master bedroom, sitting half open. From my space, I pulled out a rough cloth bundle I'd prepared. I weighed the bundle in my hand, stepped back, took aim at the open window, and threw. The package sailed through the air in a perfect arc, slipped through the gap, and landed on the bedroom floor with a soft thud.
Done.
I ducked into the shadows and vanished into the night. Only then did the exhaustion hit me. From eavesdropping outside the Revolutionary Committee office, to exploring Qin Dachuan's secret cellar, to raiding the Zhao house top to bottom, I'd been going all night without sleep, running on anger and spirit spring water. Now that the 2 biggest weights had been lifted from my shoulders, my body finally gave in. Sleepiness crashed over me like a wave. I yawned, rubbed my stinging eyes, and hurried home. The sky was already lightening at the edges. A couple of street sweepers were out beginning their morning rounds. A new day was starting. For Qin Dachuan and Zhao Qiming, this would be the beginning of the end. For the Shen family, it would be a fresh start. My steps felt lighter just thinking about it. But when I reached our front gate, I froze. The gate was slightly ajar and the living room light was on. My parents were already awake? This early? I crept to the door and listened. My mother's hushed voice drifted out. Junbai, keep it down. Don't wake Raoer. She must have been scared yesterday. Let her sleep a bit longer. Then my father's tired sigh. This is all my fault. I can't even protect you two. Saying that now won't help, my mother said, her voice cracking slightly as she fought back tears. What matters is getting Raoer's marriage settled as soon as possible. Once she's married, she won't have to follow us to the countryside. My father was quiet for a moment. But the Xie family match already fell through. Where are we going to find someone suitable in this little time? I was up all night thinking about it, my mother said. I'll go see Auntie Wu again. We'll add more to Raoer's dowry and offer a bigger bride price. I refuse to believe we can't find someone willing to marry our girl. I don't need much. As long as he has good character and is willing to look after Raoer, I don't care if he's poor. After we're gone, She can't be out there all alone with no one to lean on. Once her situation is settled, we can leave with peace of mind. Hiding around the corner, listening to my parents talk about sacrificing everything for my sake, my nose stung and my eyes went red. They'd rather suffer in the countryside themselves than let me go with them. They were willing to give away every last thing they owned just to find me a husband who could keep me safe. These were my parents, always putting me first no matter what. I blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. I heard them getting dressed, then the door opening. They walked out looking exhausted and worried, clearly hadn't slept all night. They locked the gate and hurried off toward Annie Wu's house, so focused on their mission that they didn't notice me standing in the shadows nearby. Watching them disappear down the street, my heart was a tangled mess. They didn't understand. The exile report had already been filed and was sitting at the Revolutionary Committee. Simply getting married wouldn't make it go away. Qin Dachuan and Zhao Qiming were after our family's money. Even if I married someone, those two wouldn't stop. But things were different now. I clenched my fists. I'd already delivered the evidence. Once Mayor Meng Xinmin saw those documents, Qin Dachuan and Zhao Qiming were finished. I slipped back inside through the rear door. I was completely drained. The moment my head touched the pillow, I was out cold. What I didn't know was that shortly after I fell asleep, things were already moving at the mayor's house. Mayor Meng Xinmin was an early riser. He opened his eyes at dawn and immediately noticed a cloth bundle on his bedroom floor that didn't belong there. He opened it, and the color drained from his face. He threw on his clothes, skipped breakfast, and rushed to City Hall to call an emergency meeting. A storm was about to sweep through Yen City, and the one who set it all in motion, me, was fast asleep in bed. I was jolted awake by loud voices coming from the living room. Mr. Shen, Mrs. A delicate girl like Miss Qingrao. How could she possibly endure that kind of suffering? Just nod your heads and give her to me. I guarantee she won't have to go to the countryside. And you too, I can arrange for you to stay as well. We'll be family. Would I ever mistreat you? Consider these my engagement gifts. Once you agree, there'll be much more where that came from. That voice. Half asleep, I struggled to place it. Then it clicked and I shot straight up in bed.
Qin Dachuan.
That was Qin Dachuan's voice. He was in my house. He'd come first thing in the morning, just like he'd promised Zhao Qiming last night. My heart dropped. I grabbed a jacket, threw it over my pajamas, and ran for the living room. My parents were no match for that animal. I was terrified they'd get hurt. I burst through the doorway and took in the scene. Qin Dachuan was sprawled in my father's armchair like he owned the place, that frying pan face of his split into a smug grin. Behind him stood four tall, thick-necked thugs with mean faces, clearly muscle he'd brought along. My parents stood off to the side, their expressions dark and rigid. On the coffee table sat some cigarettes, liquor, candy, and tea, apparently his so-called engagement gifts. He'd been going back and forth between sweet-talking and threatening, trying to force my parents to hand me over and give up the family fortune. Then he looked up and saw me. His jaw went slack. I'd just woken up. My long black hair was messy, a few strands sticking to my flushed cheeks. My face had that well-rested glow, my eyes still soft and hazy with sleep. I was wearing nothing but a thin jacket over my silk pajamas. Qin Dachuan's eyes went wide and glassy. He'd only seen me in a photograph before. Now, seeing me in person and in this state, something twisted lit up behind those mismatched eyes. He stood up from the sofa, rubbing his hands together, and started walking toward me with a revolting grin. Well, so this is Miss Qingrao? Even prettier than in the picture. My father immediately stepped in front of me, blocking Qin Dachuan's path completely. Chairman Qin, my daughter is young and naive. Whatever you have to say it to me. His voice was ice cold. Qin Dachuan's expression darkened. Those uneven eyes flashed with something dangerous, and he leaned in close to my father. Shen Junbai, I suggest you think carefully, he hissed, low enough that only my father could hear. A girl this beautiful, sent to the countryside? What a waste. Right now, I'm the only person in this city who can protect her. So make the smart choice. While my father held him off, I quickly moved to my mother's side, turned away from Qin Dachuan, and covered my mouth. Last night, I'd only gotten a quick glance at him from a distance. Now, up close and face to face, I could see every horrifying detail. The lumps of flesh piled on his cheekbones, those cloudy bulging eyes, the blackheads and grease coating his nose. This man was 100 times more disgusting than I'd imagined. When Qin Dachuan couldn't get past my father, he backed off and sat down on the sofa again, crossing his legs with a smug expression. Mr. Shen, Mrs. Shen, let me be clear. The report against your family is sitting on my desk right now. I haven't sent it up yet, he paused, savoring the way my parents' faces changed. If you agree today to let your daughter marry me and hand over the Shen family assets as her dowry, I guarantee that report will disappear.
No exile.
And with me protecting you in Yen City, nobody will dare touch your family. He gave them 1 minute to decide. Go to the countryside and starve, or hand me over and live the good life under his protection. My father was shaking with rage. He pointed at Qin Dachuan's face and shouted, even if I die, even if I take my daughter to the countryside to beg for food, I will never give her to a beast like you. Qin Dachuan's smile vanished. He slammed his palm on the coffee table so hard the cups jumped. Ungrateful old fool, he snarled. 2 of his thugs rolled up their sleeves and moved toward my father, cursing as they came. I didn't think. I lunged forward and planted myself in front of my father, then turned to face Qin Dachuan and shouted, Qin Dachuan, what exactly do you think you're doing? My voice cut through the room, sharp and commanding. The 2 thugs actually hesitated, thrown off by the force of it. Qin Dachuan seemed surprised that a delicate-looking girl would dare call him by name to his face. But instead of getting angry, he looked at me with even more interest. My flushed, furious face apparently excited him. He waved his men back and put on what he probably thought was a gentle smile. Miss Qingrao, don't misunderstand. I'm only thinking of your best interests. He walked toward me, his lecherous eyes roaming over my body without any shame. Your father is old and stubborn. He's hurting you, not helping you. Do you really want to go to the countryside? Look at your skin, so delicate. A few days of sun and wind, and you'll turn into a rough, dark village girl. What a waste. Marry me and you stay a lady. Wear whatever you want, eat whatever you want. Better than anything you had before. He actually tried to reach out and touch my face. I turned away in disgust. He pulled his hand back with a chuckle, not embarrassed in the slightest. Looking at that revolting face, I wanted to vomit. Enjoy life with him? I'd have nightmares every single night. But I kept my expression neutral and spoke coldly. You're saying if I marry you, our family won't be exiled? His eyes lit up. Yes. Absolutely. You say yes, and your whole family will be safe. I guarantee it. I pretended to be skeptical. I don't believe you. I heard the report against our family was already submitted by the Revolutionary Committee. It's in writing. It might already be approved. How could you possibly make that disappear? His eyebrows shot up. How do you know it was submitted? That was supposed to be classified. Only he, Zhao Qiming, and a few committee insiders knew. How would some girl find out? Inside, I was smiling coldly. On the surface, I put on an innocent, almost boastful expression and said vaguely, how do I know? Uncle Zhao Qiming told me, of course. I deliberately emphasized Uncle Zhao, nice and loud. Uncle Zhao and my father have been brothers for decades. The moment our family got in trouble, he was more worried than anyone. He came by yesterday to discuss strategy with my dad. He said that you, Chairman Qin, are incredibly powerful and that a small matter like this would be nothing for you to handle. While I spoke, I watched Qin Dachuan's face like a hawk. Just as I expected, the moment he heard Zhao Qiming, his expression twisted. Something dark and suspicious flashed behind those mismatched eyes. I could practically read his thoughts. Zhao Qiming had been told to probe us quietly, not reveal Qin Dachuan's involvement. But now it sounded like Zhao Qiming had gone straight to my family and laid everything out. The scheme, the power behind it, all of it. And Zhao Qiming was supposed to have come with Qin Dachuan this morning, but he was nowhere to be seen, which to Qin Dachuan screamed guilty conscience. The seed of suspicion was planted. Qin Dachuan was already mentally sharpening his knife for Zhao Qiming.
Perfect.
Let the dogs eat each other. Qin Dachuan was furious now, not just at my father, but at Zhao Qiming for apparently betraying his trust. He'd lost all patience. Shen Junbai, I'm asking you one last time. Do you agree to this marriage or not? His voice had turned hard and threatening. Even after you're exiled, if Qingrao marries me, I can make sure you two don't suffer in the countryside. But if you refuse my kindness, the threat hung in the air like a blade. My father pulled me behind him, stood up straight, and stared Qin Dachuan right in the eye without flinching. Qin Dachuan, drop the act. Everyone in Yen City knows what you did to your wives. I'd rather die than hand my daughter to an animal like you. That tore the last shred of pretense away. Qin Dachuan's face contorted with rage.
Fine.
Fine, he pointed at my father. Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll have to teach you a lesson. He snapped his hand at his four thugs. What are you standing around for? Smash everything. Destroy anything worth a cent in this house. I want to see whose bones are harder. Yours or my fists. The four men leaped into action like wolves, grabbing chairs and vases, smashing everything in sight. The house filled with the horrible sound of crashing and shattering.
Stop.
You thieves. Stop. My father rushed forward to intervene, but one of the thugs shoved him. Blood immediately ran down from his temple. Dad, I screamed. Junbai, my mother cried at the same time. We both rushed to catch him before he collapsed. Looking at the blood on my father's forehead, looking at our home being destroyed around us, something inside me ignited.
Pure, burning fury.
I steadied my father on his feet, then turned and locked eyes with Qin Dachuan. Qin Dachuan, stop this right now. He strolled over without a shred of guilt, wearing that disgusting, arrogant smirk. Oh, begging now, are we? His tone was mocking. Too late. He looked me up and down with those revolting eyes, like he was licking my skin with his gaze. Unless you give me a kiss right now, maybe that'll put me in a good enough mood to call them off. In your dreams, my parents shouted, struggling to get up and fight him. Qin Dachuan shoved them both to the ground. Get out of my way, you old fossils. He was incredibly strong. My parents, already hurt, crashed to the floor.
Mom.
Dad, he didn't even glance at them. He turned back to me with that filthy grin, stepping closer. Now that nobody's in the way, we can. I looked at my parents on the ground. I looked at this hideous monster closing in on me. The killing intent in my eyes could have set the room on fire. I quietly flexed my wrist, ready to strike, ready to make this animal learn what Real's suffering felt like. But before I could move, bang. The front door was kicked open so hard it nearly flew off its hinges. A tall figure burst into the room like a whirlwind. Before anyone could react, a devastating roundhouse kick slammed into Qin Dachuan's waist. AGH! Qin Dachuan screamed as he flew sideways like a rag doll, crashed into the wall, and crumpled to the floor. It happened so fast I froze for a second. I looked up. A man with broad shoulders and a strong jawline stood in front of me, his back to the light. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but his silhouette radiated a sense of safety I hadn't felt since arriving in this world. He turned his head. His voice was deep, magnetic, laced with quiet concern. Are you all right? Are you hurt? I stared at that familiar handsome face, and my eyes went wide.
Fu Yansen?
What are you doing here? Before Fu Yanjin could answer my question, Qin Dachuan was already dragging himself off the floor. That kick had been brutal and precise. He'd landed face first, and the broken vase shards on the ground had torn up half his face. 2 of his front teeth were knocked out, and his mouth was full of blood. He'd been ugly before. Now he looked like a monster crawling out of a slaughterhouse. Who the hell are you? He screamed, spitting blood and broken teeth. Do you know who I am? You're dead. He called his 4 thugs over. Stop smashing things. Get over here and kill this little punk. The 4 huge men dropped what they were breaking and surrounded Fu Yanjin. Standing behind Qin Dachuan, they blocked out most of the light in the room. I had to admit, it was an intimidating sight. Grab him. Qin Dachuan howled, clutching his swollen face. Break his legs. Show him what happens when you cross me in Yen City. I felt a twinge of worry. Fu Yanjin's kick had been impressive, but he was outnumbered 4-1, and these men were all big and strong. I instinctively moved forward to help. With my martial arts skills, a few street thugs would be easy enough. But before I could take a step, Fu Yanjin reached back without even turning around and blocked me with one arm. "Stay behind me. Protect yourself." His voice was calm but left absolutely no room for argument. I paused. Right, he didn't know I could fight. But looking at that broad, steady back, my worry melted away somehow.
Fine.
He clearly knew what he was doing. If things went south, I could always step in secretly. "Be careful," I said, and stepped back obediently. I helped my parents to their feet and moved them to a safe corner. Qin Dachuan sneered. "Playing hero for the pretty girl? Boy, today I'm not just going to destroy you. I'm going to have my way with your little beauty right in front of your face." He gave the order. "Get him. Cripple him." The 4 men charged like starving wolves. Fu Yanjin didn't move an inch. His expression didn't change at all. The moment the first thug's fist was about to connect with his face, he shifted slightly to the side, dodged it effortlessly, and drove his elbow straight up into the man's chin. Crack. A clear sound of bone breaking. The thug's eyes rolled back and he dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. He didn't even manage a scream. The whole thing was so fast it was almost a blur. The other 3 barely registered what had happened before their partner was down. After a split second of shock, they lunged forward even angrier than before. Fu Yanjin didn't even blink. A clean side kick sent the one on the left flying across the room. An over-the-shoulder throw slammed the one on the right into the floor. The last one, he simply grabbed by the throat, lifted him off the ground like a chicken, and tossed him into the pile of his groaning friends. The entire fight lasted maybe 15 seconds. 4 men who'd been snarling and flexing moments ago were now writhing on the floor, clutching broken arms and legs, howling in pain. None of them could get back up. My eyes were practically sparkling. This man was incredible. His fighting skills were beyond anything I'd seen, even compared to the Special Forces soldiers I'd encountered in my past life. I couldn't help wondering what unit he served in. Qin Dachuan, meanwhile, looked like he'd seen a ghost. He'd paid good money for those 4 fighters, each one supposedly able to handle 3 or 5 men at once. And this one soldier had dismantled all 4 of them in the blink of an eye. What kind of monster was this? He finally realized he'd kicked an iron wall today. He watched Fu Yanjin walking toward him step by step, and his legs turned to jelly. He stumbled. "Touch one hair on my head, and I'll make sure you never see another sunrise." Fu Yanjin stopped in front of him and looked down with a cold smile. "Revolutionary Committee Chairman? And that gives you the right to force women into marriage and bully innocent people with these thugs. Sounds like this city's Revolutionary Committee is overdue for a serious cleanup." Qin Dachuan was shaking under that icy stare, but he wasn't ready to surrender completely. He puffed up his neck, grasping at whatever dignity he had left. "Who do you think you are, talking about cleaning up the Revolutionary Committee? Don't get cocky, boy. You've made an enemy today. Just you wait. I'll make you pay for what you've done." The words had barely left his mouth when a thunderous voice boomed from outside the door, shaking with righteous fury. "Qin Dachuan, who exactly are you going to make pay?" My heart leaped. They were here. The people who would bring Qin Dachuan to justice had finally arrived. A stern middle-aged man in a Zhongshan suit strode through the door, followed by several uniformed police officers with serious faces. It was Mayor Meng Xinmin. Qin Dachuan froze when he saw him. Then his face went pale. Why was the mayor here? And with this many police? Before Qin Dachuan could say a word, the officers moved in fast. Handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, and the 4 groaning thugs on the floor were cuffed too.
Mayor Meng.
What is the meaning of this? Qin Dachuan shouted, struggling against the officers. What law have I broken? I'm the chairman of the Revolutionary Committee. You can't arrest me. They dragged him toward the door. When he saw what was waiting in the courtyard, his face went white. A crowd of officials had gathered, city government cadres, deputy chairmen, and committee members from the Revolutionary Committee itself. Every single one of them was watching him with a mixture of complicated emotions and barely concealed satisfaction. He was being publicly taken down. Meng Xinmin, this is abuse of power. I'll report you to the provincial government, he screamed. The mayor looked at him with pure disgust. Revolutionary Committee Chairman? Someone has reported you for corruption, abuse of power, and embezzling public funds. You're being taken in for investigation. I suggest you cooperate. The most serious charge from my evidence bundle was Qin Dachuan's connection to enemy agents. He was a spy. But that was too sensitive to announce publicly without the full investigation, so the mayor was leading with corruption for now. Qin Dachuan panicked for a moment, then quickly collected himself. Without hard evidence, what could they actually prove? He started wailing about being falsely accused.
I'm innocent.
Mayor Meng, this is slander. I've devoted myself entirely to public service. Someone is framing me. This is political persecution. The mayor let out a cold laugh. Not embezzling? Then explain to me why you showed up at the Shen family home today with a gang of thugs, when the Shen family's exile paperwork hasn't even been approved yet. What were you trying to do? Get your hands on their property before the organization could? He pointed at the destruction inside her house. Is this what public service looks like? Qin Dachuan had no answer. He could hardly admit he'd come to force a marriage and steal our wealth. His eyes darted around, and he blurted out a lie. I wasn't raiding anything, mister. Shen agreed to let his daughter marry me. I came to discuss the wedding. Discuss a wedding? The mayor almost laughed. By smashing their house and injuring people? Do you even hear yourself? Qin Dachuan immediately tried to shift blame, pointing at Fu Yanjun. It wasn't me.
He did it.
That pretty boy smashed everything and attacked me and my men for no reason. You've got the wrong man. Arrest him. The mayor turned to look at Fu Yanjun for the first time. The moment he saw his face, he paused, then his expression shifted to surprise.
Xiaofu?
What are you doing here? Fu Yanjun gave the mayor a slight nod. Uncle Meng. He didn't explain why he was there. He simply pointed at Qin Dachuan and stated the facts in his usual brief way. This man came to the Shen house to cause trouble. He tried to force Miss Shen into marriage and physically injured Mr. Shen. If I hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been serious. Forcing a woman into marriage by violence, extremely severe in nature, the mayor's anger flared even hotter. He'd already been furious from reading the evidence I'd delivered. Now, seeing Qin Dachuan's behavior with his own eyes pushed him over the edge.
Qin Dachuan.
What do you have to say for yourself? In broad daylight, you dare act this lawlessly. He leaned in close and whispered something only Qin Dachuan could hear. I suggest you cooperate fully with the investigation. I have more than one piece of evidence against you. The things you've done can't be talked away. If you force me to lay it all out, dying 100 times wouldn't be enough. Qin Dachuan's face drained of color. More than one piece of evidence? What did he have? Before he could ask, 2 officers shoved him out the gate. As he was being dragged away, he glanced back and saw Mayor Meng Xinmin speaking quietly with Fu Yanjun, their manner warm and familiar. The question burned in his mind. Who is this young man? And how did he know the mayor? I was wondering the same thing. Qin Dachuan was dragged away by the police, cursing and shouting until his voice faded at the end of the alley. The officials who'd come to watch all left too. Everyone could see that Qin Dachuan was finished and that the power structure in Yen City was about to change. Once the courtyard was finally quiet, I rushed to check on my parents. My mother slowly stood up, leaning on the wall. I'm fine, just fell down. Go check on your father. His head is bleeding. My father's temple had been cut open on the cabinet corner, blood still trickling down and staining his hair. He waved me off. It's just a surface wound. Are you okay, Rauer? Were you scared? Even now, they were worried about me instead of themselves. My heart ached with warmth.
I've fine, Dad.
Don't move. Let me find the first aid kit. While I went to get supplies, Mayor Meng pulled Fu Yanjun aside to the corner of the courtyard. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. The mayor asked why Fu Yanjun was here instead of returning to his unit. Fu Yanjun answered simply, "She's my blind date match." The mayor's eyes nearly popped out. "That girl in there is your fiancée." Fu Yanjun didn't confirm or deny it. He just let the assumption stand. Then Fu Yanjun asked about our family situation. The mayor sighed and explained that the exile couldn't be avoided. The report had already been filed. He acknowledged that my father was a good man who'd done a lot of charity work, but in this political climate, once you were labeled a capitalist, that was that. Fu Yanjin asked the mayor for a favor. Could he arrange for my parents to be sent to Wanha village specifically? The mayor was surprised. It was remote, but close to Fu Yanjin's hometown of Xia village. He suggested just sending them to Fu Yanjin's home village, so he could look after them. Something dark crossed Fu Yanjin's face, and the mayor immediately caught on, slapping his own forehead. Right, your parents. Forget I said that. Apparently, Fu Yanjin's relationship with his own family was terrible. His parents had been biased against him. When they heard soldiers got free food and a small allowance, they'd forced him to drop out of school despite his excellent grades and give his spot to his younger brother. That decision led to him being injured on the battlefield, which was how he'd gotten that scar on his face. The mayor agreed immediately to arrange Anha village. It turned out Fu Yanjin had once saved the mayor's life on the battlefield, carried him out of enemy encirclement on his back. Without Fu Yanjin, there would be no Mayor Meng. Helping his future in-laws was the least he could do. I need to get back and interrogate that mad dog Qin Dachuan, the mayor said, patting Fu Yanjin's shoulder. Take care of your fiancé. Come find me if you need anything. The moment the mayor's group left, my parents came out to thank Fu Yanjin properly. Young man, we can't thank you enough. My father grabbed his hand, so overcome with emotion, he could barely speak. If you hadn't shown up today, our family, my mother's eyes were red with gratitude too. You're our family's savior. What's your name? Are you Rauer's friend? I stepped forward to introduce him. Mom, Dad, he's not my friend. He's the soldier I told you about yesterday, the one I accidentally went on the blind date with. Both of them froze. They looked Fu Yanjin up and down, unable to believe their eyes. Tall, straight-backed, handsome features, yes, there was a scar on his face, but rather than making him look ugly, it gave him a rugged, commanding presence. His whole bearing screamed that this was no ordinary man. This was the wrong blind date their daughter had told them about. This was nothing like what they'd imagined. Fu Yanjin stepped forward and introduced himself formally. Uncle, Auntie, my name is Fu Yanjin. I'm a soldier. Then he turned and walked to the courtyard gate, where he picked up a mesh bag from the windowsill. I bought a few things on my way over. It's nothing much. Please accept them. Inside the bag were malted milk powder, canned goods, and pastries wrapped in wax paper. All extremely precious and expensive items in this era. My mother immediately waved her hands. We couldn't possibly. You've already helped us so much today. My father tried to push the bag back too, but Fu Yanjin was firm. As a junior paying respects, this is simply my gesture of goodwill. If you refuse, it means I must have done something wrong. They couldn't argue with that and finally accepted. My mother held the heavy bag, her opinion of Fu Yanjin rising even higher. Handsome, generous, and most importantly, a man of real character and responsibility. Come inside, my father said warmly. Excuse the mess. I watched my parents usher Fu Yanjin into the house, feeling complicated. I'd overheard his conversation with the mayor. I knew he was the one who'd arranged for my parents to be sent to Anha village specifically. He'd done our family an enormous favor today, and it was only right to invite him in. But given our family situation, was it really safe for him to get involved with us? I sighed and followed them into the wrecked living room. We all walked inside and stood there staring at the destruction. It was awkward. My parents looked embarrassed. Look at this mess. There's not even a clean place to stand. My mother sighed, setting Fu Yanjin's gifts on the one table that was still intact. Sit down, Xiao Fu. Let me make you some tea. She took 2 steps toward the kitchen, then stopped, her face falling. The thermos, teapot, cups, everything had been smashed to pieces by Qin Dachuan's thugs. Tea leaves were scattered across the floor, the tin can crushed flat. There was literally nothing left to serve a guest with. My father's face went red. Those animals, he muttered, then turned to Fu Yanjin with an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry. We don't even have a cup for water anymore. Fu Yanjin quickly waved it off. Please don't apologize, uncle. This isn't your fault. He offered to go buy replacements, but my mother shut that down immediately. He was a guest. Instead, she turned to me. Rauer, stay and look after Xiao Fu. Your father and I will run to the supply store for cups and tea, then stop at the food shop for groceries. Xiao Fu is staying for lunch today, no arguments. My father nodded vigorously. Absolutely. You must stay for lunch. We'd feel terrible otherwise. Before either of us could respond, they grabbed a shopping basket and rushed out the door. Take care of our guest, Rao, or my mother called back. The courtyard gate creaked shut, and suddenly the house was silent. Just me and Fu Yanjun, standing in the middle of a wrecked living room, staring at each other. The awkwardness was suffocating. My cheeks felt hot. What were my parents thinking, just leaving us alone together like this? I stole a glance at him. He was watching me with those deep, unreadable eyes. My heart skipped for no reason at all. I quickly looked away, my thoughts a jumbled mess. What was I supposed to say? We couldn't just stand here doing nothing. We both spoke at the same time, then both stopped. The silence was even worse after that. I wanted to curl up and disappear. Finally, I caved. I grabbed a small stool that had been knocked over, set it upright, and started dusting it off. The place is a disaster. Have a seat. I'll clean up a bit. The corner of his mouth seemed to twitch upward for just a second before his expression returned to its usual calm. I'll help. He bent down and started picking up the larger pieces of debris, without waiting for a response. Neither of us spoke again. The only sounds in the room were the swish of my broom on the floor and the clink of broken porcelain being dropped into the trash. It was still quiet, but somehow the crushing awkwardness began to ease. My mind, though, was anything but calm. This man was so strange. Yesterday I'd mistaken him for someone else, and he'd never said a word about it. Today he'd appeared out of nowhere, kicked down my door, and saved my family from a monster. Now, he was silently helping me sweep up broken glass like it was the most natural thing in the world.
Why?
What was he doing all this for? Was it really just because we were blind date partners? But we'd gotten matched by accident. My brain was a tangled mess, but my hands kept working. I dumped a dustpan full of trash, looked up, and saw he'd already righted all the overturned tables and chairs. Now he was reaching for the big wooden wardrobe that had been knocked over. That cabinet was solid wood, incredibly heavy. My father and brother together could barely lift it. That's too heavy. You can't do it alone, I called out, hurrying over to help. Before I got there, Fu Yanjun braced his arms and simply heaved the massive wardrobe upright in one motion. He barely even broke a sweat. I stared with my mouth open. His strength was insane. He turned around and caught me gaping. He seemed a little self-conscious, reaching up to scratch his nose. I'm strong. Used to it. I finally asked the question that had been eating at me. Fu Yanjun, thank you for helping us today.
But
How did you find this place? He paused mid-motion, then straightened up. He was quiet for a long moment, tossing a broken vase fragment into the trash pile. The silence stretched out. Had I been too blunt? Did he think I was questioning his motives? But I really needed to know. Yen's city wasn't that small. We'd met once yesterday at the restaurant, and today he'd shown up at my exact doorstep at exactly the right moment. That was too convenient. Finally, he spoke. I was waiting for you at the state-run restaurant this morning, like we agreed. But you never came. I was about to head back when I passed through this neighborhood and heard the neighbors talking about someone causing trouble in this house. He met my eyes. His voice was perfectly even. Then I heard your voice. Passing by? Heard my voice. A giant question mark appeared in my head. This excuse was terrible. Our house was a standalone building with its own courtyard, set apart from the nearest neighbors. Even with Qin Dachuan's men smashing things, the noise wouldn't carry that far. And even if he had been passing by and heard a commotion, any normal person would have walked the other way to avoid trouble, not kicked the door down and charged inside. And the most obvious problem of all, my eyes drifted to those two mesh bags sitting in the corner, filled with expensive malted milk powder and canned fruit. Who carries premium gifts like that when they're just passing by? This was the worst lie I'd ever heard. I knew perfectly well he was lying, but I didn't call him out. He'd clearly come here on purpose. He just didn't want to admit it because he was afraid of scaring me off with how forward he'd been. This big, tough-looking man with his cold exterior actually had a surprisingly delicate heart. Something about that made me want to laugh, and at the same time, left a warm feeling I couldn't quite name. When Qin and his thugs had been tearing our house apart, the commotion was impossible to miss. But not a single neighbor had come to help, not even to say a word. Everyone was protecting themselves, terrified of being dragged down by the Shen family's troubles. Only him, a man I'd met exactly once. While everyone else looked the other way, he charged straight in without hesitation. Wasn't he afraid Qin would come after him? Wasn't he worried about being tainted by our family status?
He must have thought about it.
But he came anyway. That kind of loyalty weighed heavy on my heart. I kept my face calm and pretended to believe his story. I see. What a lucky coincidence. Thank you for today. He grunted in acknowledgement and went back to cleaning up. With him helping, the work went much faster. He handled all the heavy lifting by himself, moving furniture, righting cabinets, while I swept floors and wiped surfaces. We didn't talk much, but the atmosphere between us had warmed up considerably. While cleaning the coffee table, I noticed the bloodstain my father had left when he hit his head. The anger surged through me again. Qin Zhao Qiming, every last one of those animals would pay. That reminded me of what I'd overheard between Fu Yanjin and the mayor. I heard your conversation with Mayor Meng earlier, I said. He paused and looked at me. Are my parents really going to Anha village? Is the village chief there someone who can actually look after them? This was the thing I cared about most right now. He didn't try to hide it. The village chief's surname is Li. He's a good man. I'll write to him ahead of time and explain your parents' situation. Out of respect for me, he'll definitely keep an eye on them. I can't promise they'll have an easy life, but at the very least, nobody will bully them. I knew the exile couldn't be stopped. But having someone reliable watching over them in an unfamiliar place was infinitely better than being sent somewhere with no connections at all. Thank you, I said, and I meant every word. Fu Yanjin, really. Thank you. I asked him for the village chief's contact information, so I could send my parents supplies after they left. He agreed, without hesitation. The mood in the room softened after that. Then he called my name, my full name, in a tone more serious than I'd ever heard from him. Comrade Shen Qingrao. I looked up, puzzled. About what I said yesterday at the restaurant, that I'm willing to marry you and take you to follow the army. Have you thought about it? The question hit me like a pebble dropped into still water. Ripples spread everywhere. I hadn't expected him to ask so directly, so suddenly. My brain short-circuited. Marry him? Follow the army? Those words felt impossibly distant and foreign. Flustered, I reached for the last large piece of broken vase on the floor. My fingers fumbled, and the sharp edge of the porcelain sliced across my index finger. A bright red bead of blood welled up from my fingertip, vivid against my pale skin. What happened? He was at my side in an instant. The moment he saw the blood, his brow furrowed tight. Don't move. His voice was commanding, leaving no room for argument. Before I could process what was happening, I felt myself being lifted off the ground. He'd scooped me up, one arm under my knees, one behind my back, and was carrying me in his arms. What are you? My eyes went wide, and I instinctively tried to squirm free. It was broad daylight. He couldn't just stop moving. You'll hurt yourself worse. His voice was low and firm, the kind of authority you simply don't argue with. He carried me to a clean chair nearby and set me down with extraordinary care, steady and gentle, nothing improper about it. But my heart was hammering completely out of control. His arms had been so broad, so solid. He smelled faintly of soap, clean and pleasant. For that brief moment against his chest, I'd felt his heartbeat, strong and steady. My face erupted in heat, turning the shade of a boiled shrimp. 2 lifetimes I'd lived, and I had never once been held by a man like that. He didn't seem to notice my blushing at all. His entire focus was on my injured finger. He knelt down and carefully took my hand in his. Let me see. His fingers were rough and warm, lined with thin calluses. When they brushed against my skin, a strange tingling sensation shot through me. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it firmly. Don't be afraid. It's just a small cut. His voice had gone soft, like he was calming a frightened animal. He examined the wound closely, then exhaled with relief. It's not deep. No glass stuck inside. He looked around, spotted the first aid kit I'd used earlier on my father's forehead, and walked over to grab iodine, cotton swabs, and bandages. Then he came back and knelt down in front of me on one knee. I stared at him, completely frozen.
What?
What was he doing? He opened the iodine bottle, dipped a cotton swab, and lifted my hand. His touch was incredibly gentle as he started cleaning the wound. The cold iodine stung when it hit the cut. I sucked in a sharp breath. Bear with it. Almost done, he murmured without looking up. His movements were skilled and quick. Disinfect, apply medicine, then carefully wrap the finger with clean gauze. Throughout the whole process, he kept his head down, focused like he was performing the most important mission of his life. His long, thick lashes cast small shadows under his eyes. That straight nose, those thin pressed lips, the strong profile of his jaw. I found myself just staring at him, watching him tend to my tiny cut with such care and seriousness. Something inside me started to melt. A feeling I'd never experienced before crept up slowly, wrapping around my heart like a vine. A little sour, a little tingly, and just a hint of sweetness. Was this what it felt like to have your heart moved? In my previous life, I'd poured everything into medicine and never once dated. I'd sometimes imagined what my future partner might be like, but I'd never pictured someone like this man. He didn't talk much. He was even a little clumsy with words. But he showed his feelings through actions, the strongest protection and the gentlest care. Done, he tied the last knot and looked up, meeting my gaze head-on. Our eyes locked. The distance between us was almost nothing. He was kneeling on one knee, looking up at me. I was sitting in the chair, looking down at him. His warm breath brushed softly against the back of my hand, ticklish and light. Something in the air between us shifted, turning charged and warm. His Adam's apple bobbed once, involuntarily. He was still holding my hand. He'd forgotten to let go. I looked into his deep eyes and felt like I was being pulled into a whirlpool. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure he could hear it. Keep the wound dry for a few days. Change the bandage daily. His voice had gone slightly hoarse. Okay. My own voice sounded like it was floating somewhere above my body. Just as the moment reached its most delicate, most electric point, Rower, we're back. Look what your father and I bought. My mother's cheerful voice rang out from the courtyard, followed by the creak of the gate swinging open. We snapped out of it like puppets whose strings had been yanked. Fu Yanjin released my hand and shot to his feet, so fast he created a small breeze. I sprang off the chair like a startled cat. We practically flew to opposite sides of the room, both flustered, both still carrying traces of pink on our faces. We looked exactly like two children caught doing something they shouldn't. My parents walked in loaded with bags and took in the scene, the cleaned-up room, their daughter standing on one end, Fu Yanjin on the other, both looking suspiciously awkward. What are you two doing? My mother asked, puzzled. She glanced at the tidied living room, then at my flushed cheeks, and her eyes lit up with instant understanding. She shot me a playful glare. How could you make a guest do housework? Xiao Fu came to visit, not to be put to work. I started. But Fu Yanjin cut in first. Auntie, it's not Qingrao's fault. I volunteered. His voice still carried the faintest trace of nervousness, but his tone was firm, taking all the responsibility onto himself. My parents exchanged a look, both hiding smiles. This young man knew how to look out for their daughter. All right. We can see you care about our Rower, my mother said with a teasing grin. She handed me the new cups and tea leaves. Go make Xiao Fu some hot tea. Your father and I will cook lunch. Before I could react, they disappeared into the kitchen together. I stood there clutching the teacups and tea, face burning, watching them go. I stole a glance at Fu Yanjin. He was looking at me too, and there seemed to be a faint smile hiding in his eyes. I ducked my head and practically fled to the sink to make tea. When I came back with a tray, I found him standing by the wall, trying to straighten a crooked oil painting. It was our family portrait, all four of us, smiling brightly. Don't bother with that, I said quietly, setting his tea down. In a couple of days, This home won't look like this anymore. Most of these things will probably be confiscated. A trace of sadness slipped into my voice despite my best effort. I'd only been in this world a few days, but my parents' love had already made this place feel like a real home. And soon, that home would be broken apart. Fu Yanjin's hands paused on the painting. He turned to face me, clearly wanting to say something comforting, but not knowing how. He'd never been good with words. After a long silence, he offered stiffly, "Your home is beautifully decorated. I've never seen anything like it. You can tell it was arranged with a lot of care. It feels warm." I heard the longing underneath his words. I remembered how distant and cold he'd seemed when mentioning his own family at the restaurant yesterday. This man probably longed for a warm home too. A thought rose up from somewhere deep inside me. "Would you like me to show you around the house?" I offered. "While it's still here." He looked surprised. I could tell he wanted to say it might not be appropriate, but when he met my eyes, the refusal died on his lips.
He wanted to.
He wanted to know more about me, about the place where I grew up, the small details of my life. "Okay," he said.